Hi, this is William Paul Liggett from Junk Text, and we're going to be getting into more of my video lectures. But before we do, I got one joke for you, right? All right, here we get into it. All right, what do lawyers wear to work? Lawsuits.
All right, so this should be a fun video lecture talking about SQL functions and math. All right, so this is going to, the only thing is this is going to expand upon my previous lectures. One of the earlier ones was talking about basic SQL queries, and then I did another video talking about SQL Multi-Table Queries. So if you haven't seen those yet, I would highly recommend to, you probably want to stop where you're watching right now and backtrack to those earlier videos, all right? Because I'm gonna build upon those concepts that I've already presented before, and we're gonna learn a lot of new things and kind of put everything together in a different kind of aspect here, all right? We're gonna basically learn a lot of the capabilities and powers, the functions, and of course math. You gotta love math, right? So yeah, let's go ahead and keep going. All right, this should be, I think you're gonna have fun. I think this is gonna be a fun thing to watch through. All right, I know it's a bit long, all right, but trust me, I think you're gonna get a lot out of it. All right. Okay, so the flow of this lecture, what I'm going to be doing is there will be here and there portions where I'm going to do a bit of warm-up exercises. All right, because even if you've seen those previous videos of mine, I'm going to make sure you're not totally lost when we start doing some stuff. All right, so I'm going to kind of sprinkle some of these warm-up exercises here and there. All right, and then obviously as the video is talking about, we're going to be talking about SQL functions. I'll explain what that's all about, and then SQL math. Okay. Now, I'm just going to kind of explain the overview of what I'm even talking about here. All right. That regarding SQL functions, okay, they can do, and I'll just kind of read the slide here because I think I summarized this pretty good, is that SQL functions, they are built-in capabilities for calculations, for other reasons, changing text values, formatting time output. Depending on which database system, you could even get basically system information and a whole bunch of different things. All right. The only thing is that each relational database management system, such as MySQL, PostgreSQL, Oracle, Microsoft Access, things like that, they all basically kind of differ on which SQL functions that they support, and then even if there's kind of similar ones between the different systems, that the syntax or how you would write the SQL, the code, to talk to your database, they all kind of just differ. All right. The only thing is there are some, one of the ones that's like very kind of cross system that works all pretty much the same is these 5 functions here. Okay, talking about sum, min, max, average, and count. Okay, so that's going to be the focus of basically this video lecture. All right, now you can obviously take what I'm showing you and how these functions work, and you can adapt them reading through various manuals on other aspects, and you can kind of piece together how you might do something else. Okay, and before I explain this thing about SQL math, and I talk about checking the manual for these different systems. So you know what? I'm actually going to do that right now. I'm going to show you. There's a bunch of these different functions. Okay, just so you have like a kind of an idea of what I'm talking about. So for instance, I have already pulled up some examples here. So what you're looking at right now is the latest MySQL documentation that they have on the system, talking about, I just went to a section talking about string functions and operators and whatnot. If you're not familiar, a string that deals with like text, okay, kind of comes from programming lingo, where it's like each character, it's like a string of characters kind of a thing. Anyhow, when you hear string, they're talking about like text, okay, like anything you could type, and it could include numbers or whatever. But like you know, so here's MySQL. Maybe zoom in a little more here. So they got stuff dealing with ASCII, blah blah blah. That's a kind of way to encode text values. There's stuff about bin or like binary representation, and there's a bunch of things like concat, which is like a fancy way of basically you're gluing two text strings together and such. But I mean, you could spend eons trying to understand every little minutia of all of these functions here, right? It's kind of like blah 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 blah, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, because I just went to string functions. You know, I could back up. Here's just, they have a whole thing at chapter 12, and I just showed you the string ones, right? There's a bunch of these that are out there. Now this is for MySQL. There is a related system called PostgreSQL. All right, they differ in some of the capabilities and things like that than MySQL, but anyhow. So here's another relational database management system. I'm looking at their manual, and I just pointed to one just to kind of get some differences here. This is talking about some of the mathematical functions that they support. Okay, so here's some different operators. Like, we'll get to that generally a bit later. But then maybe zoom in a bit. Well, I don't know, it's not zooming as much as I would like. Anyhow, you got stuff talking about like absolute values of stuff, cube roots, ceiling functions. There's a bunch of stuff. If you're a math nerd, like, you're going to be really excited and happy about seeing all this stuff. Like, ooh, pi, you know, right? Now I'm hungry. So, yeah, you can go kind of crazy with all these functions. Just be aware of, like, sometimes you don't have to like basically reinvent the wheel to do something that you're like, you don't have to reprogram something that might just be able to be handled kind of natively in the database system when you're doing something that is, you know, looking at values on your data in your database, or you're trying to change something or something like that, right? So this is where these functions start to become very useful, okay? And then also, since I'm going to be using Microsoft Access to showcase everything, the functions that I'm going to cover, the one that has the most wide, you know, support across the different systems, you might see it phrased as this SQL aggregate, like an aggregate functions. I'll explain more of that later, but this is basically just, when you hear the term aggregate, it's just your it's working on all values that might show up in like a query or something like that. Like all of the rows together is what aggregate is talking about. So you can see some of the things that I'm going to touch on, like min and max, and then there's count and average, and then there's that sum function, and they got other ones listed here. But you can go crazy, okay, because each of these systems differ with everything. All right, I just wanted to kind of showcase that I'm basically covering the tip of the iceberg. All right, because it would take you know, like a 20-hour video to, or more, you know, take 300-hour video to cover everything, right? So who's going to watch that? Anyways, so that's what we're going to focus on. I'm going to show you the gist of how SQL functions work. So we got, you know, sum, min, max, average, and count. All right. Then I'm going to dive into, because it's kind of, I feel like it's a bit related, as maybe I guess you saw from the PostgreSQL documentation. You can basically do math, which I kind of have a bit of a joke here, like, oh, that's everybody's favorite topic, right? Math. Well, so that is what we're going to do. We're going to use basically some math, all right? And you can do some pretty powerful things. I'll also show you can do some weird things too. You just want to know that you want to do right, you know, proper math, right? So that's kind of the deal that I'm going to kind of showcase there, all right? Okay, so now here's one of these warm-up exercises. This should be super easy peasy, okay? Before I start going into typing the syntax, I know you can see the syntax right now, that if you've seen my earlier videos that I've shown before, they dealt with a database talking about like employees and stuff like that, which was like oriented to a small company and such. So what I'm doing here, I just want to mention, okay, in case you're following my videos and such, is that I'm going to deviate a bit, kind of make it a little more interesting. I'm gonna go to a different database altogether, which is it's all talking about, like, basically it's a doctor's office. All right, so they're interested in tracking, like, well, you know, which doctor that they have on staff, how much they pay that doctor when they hired him and them and so forth, right? And then also, well, which patients, what appointments they have, you know, like standard stuff that you might be tracking in a doctor's office. All right. So, with that in mind, and I'll get back to this SQL syntax stuff. All right. I just want to, before I do that, let me kind of orient you to this database. So again, I'm using Microsoft Access. However, everything that I cover in this video, you can apply to any other relational database system, basically, that's out there. So again, MySQL, PostgreSQL, Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, you know, IBM DB2, things like that. Whatever, right? So all the standard kind of major systems dealing with relational database technology, for what I showcase, should basically work in all these other systems. All right. Now, with that in mind, I'm using Microsoft Access as like a tricycle, as I've mentioned in my other videos, right? Where it's, to me, it feels like the easiest interface to get accustomed to all these database concepts. I'm actually more of an open source software advocate, and Microsoft Access is not open source technology, but it is the easiest one, I think, to kind of get used to what I'm going to be trying to expose you into the video. Whereas I personally would rather, you know, like would love to go into all, just like, say, MySQL or PostgreSQL, things like that. It's just that, which are open source systems, I think that they can be a little overwhelming, like the interface and the commands and stuff like that, to do all that. I think basically I might scare a lot of people away. So that's why I'm doing everything in Microsoft Access. All right. So this database, what I'm talking about, this is talking about a doctor's office. There's only 4 tables going on with this. This is not meant to be like the most real world example, because you could go, you know, if you actually work at a doctor's office, you could see where it's like, well, wait a minute, you're only checking if they have a primary insurance, or, you know, for a patient. Well, maybe they could have secondary insurance and tertiary insurance and that. It's like, I get that. All right, I'm just trying to get something kind of simplistic. You get the gist of, and you could expand upon what's being presented here. All right, so I have 4 different tables here, different data tables. Okay, you can see them, hopefully. I know the font may be a little small, but you got like an appointment table, a doctor table, an insurance table, and a patient table. Now, before I just start clicking around through these things, I'm always a huge fan, and you're going to see why later, of getting oriented to what is referred to as like your entity relationship diagram. Okay, that's a very formal way of saying, which I'm going to pull up in Access, basically a visual map of your system. Okay, like how do these different data tables connect and so forth. All right, so check this out. I'm going to go up in here in my system. I'm going to go to database tools. They just call it relationships. Okay, and this is Microsoft Access's version of an ERD, an entity relationship diagram. Okay, so here's those 4 tables that I was mentioning before. Now visually, the relationships, how they all kind of connect, work like such. All right, I plan to kind of create more videos to explain more the background of what I'm talking about here, but the gist works like this. Like we have doctors, that we're tracking in the system. We have patients, right? And then some of the aspects, it's like, well, a doctor could see many patients and a patient could see different doctors, okay, like and such. So ultimately, between these two, like, we actually have what's referred to as a many-to-many relationship. Okay, it may not look like that completely, because in the system, graphically here, you have to have what's referred to as an intersection table to, like, make your many-to-many relationship work, because a doctor could see many patients, and a patient could see many different doctors. Okay, so, and to make sense of all that, what I'm talking about, we have this intersection table. So that's why this is kind of set up right here. So, like, long story short, I'm not going to get into all the design efforts here, but basically, like, this is tracking, like, which appointments were made on the system. Like, it's seeing which doctor saw what patient, when they saw them, how long it was, and, you know, did they actually see that patient? As in, like, did the patient cancel at the last, you know, like, maybe that's what they wanted to do, but did they actually see the doctor or something like that? So that may or may not happen, but maybe we just want to keep track of, for a patient, if they just kind of keep having in the system that they want to see something, and we're like, hey, stop trying to make pointless appointments, all right? Stuff like that. But that's kind of the gist of this whole kind of structure. And then from, say, the patient perspective, it's like a practical thing when you're dealing with cost issues and stuff like that. It's like, well, you know, hopefully they have insurance and such, right? And so in this case, it's saying that, like, a patient should have, like, at least one insurance company, and then an insurance company could have many different patients. Okay, so that's what these little symbols are meaning. I'm just kind of talking through this in a very brief form here, because the focus of this video is not to get into the whole structure of what you're looking at here. Instead, I'm going to focus on using SQL to, you know, find a lot of useful reports, a lot of useful information from what we have stored in this system. Okay, but now that you have kind of a orientation to what we're going to get into, let me just kind of click through, and I'll just maybe go from left to right. Okay, so from the doctor side, right? So if I double click here, we have, and then I'll do this so you can see it a little bit easier. The sizing gets a little off sometimes. I'll just do that for now because it's kind of a longer, there's a lot of columns in this table. Okay, so what you're looking at, there's 5 doctors in the system, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And these are the last name, these are the names of the doctors, like Dr. Gupta, Dr. Klein, Dr. Fernandez, and so forth. Okay, it shows when they were hired, when they left, things like that, how much they make per hour, things like that. All right. Then let's see the appointment. You know what? I'm going to show you the patient table first. Maybe that'll make more sense. So for the patient table, it's just like all patient data, like who are your patients. So apparently this is the very first patient ever. So patient ID is 1. Okay. And this is Tamika Jones and blah, blah, blah. This is all fake data, obviously. All right. I'm not releasing anybody's, like, actual details here. Their supposed phone number, address, where they live, and so on and so forth. Blah, 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 right? A lot of standard stuff that you get when they signed up and whatever, right? A lot of generic things that you would assume would be part of a patient. Okay. Yeah. So, then here, it's like, all right, appointment. Like, what doctor saw what patient, okay? And the way that this works is, and this is a good design type situation. Let's see here. I'm going to maybe see if we can see that better. Okay, there we go. This is like, oh, Doctor ID 1 saw patient ID 1 on this time, blah, 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 for this long. They actually did see this person, which then you're probably already wondering, like, what? Who's Doctor ID 1? Okay, well, so you could either manually go open up your table and go to Doctor ID 1 is Gupta. all right, Dr. Gupta. And then you're like, all right. And then patient ID 1. They're like, oh man, patient ID. So I got to open the patient table. Under the patient table, that's linked to Tamika Jones. So you can already see, like, this would be horrendous if you had to manually click through, click clack, bounce around. Like, you drive yourself nuts if you had to, like, do that manually, right? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to be getting into, like, these different queries, making sense of everything, and tying all this data back together. And we won't have to just see things like Dr. ID 1 and patient ID 1. We're going to actually see the names of the patients and so forth, all right? And that's kind of what we're going to get into, all right? Then the last table we'll explore is talking about the insurance table, like which insurance companies and so forth. So here we go. It's very kind of simplistic. I use real company names here, fake phone numbers, whatever. And say in the system, this is how they tracked it. Like, this is what they have so far is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They have 5 different companies that they're tracking right now. And that's kind of the deal. So this is, look at these numbers. Insurance ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Well, if you look at the relationships, okay, here's this insurance ID, and it's linked to the patient table with insurance ID. Okay, I know it's insurance underscore ID, which is how you want to do it, but when I'm just talking, it's just easier to say insurance ID. Anyhow, so if I look, say, on the patient table, okay, and I scroll all the way over here, you're going to see this column of basically which insurance company that they have. All right, so this was Tamika Jones, I think. Yeah, she has insurance company number 2, which is, when you go back over here, that's Kaiser Permanente, okay, and such. All right, that's kind of the deal of what we're dealing with. All right, but again, we're going to make SQL simplify everything for us. It's a little complicated to learn some of this stuff, but once you get it, you're going to, first of all, everyone's going to think you're a wizard, all right? It's cool if you name drop me and let them know, like, oh, William Liggett hooked me up. That'd be cool, but I know most people don't do that. So anyways, let's keep going, all right? So let's see here. I'm going to close these tables down. I don't really need to see this right now. This is just talking about, I changed the size of the columns, or whatever, save it, I guess. Close this down over here, close that down. Yeah, save the size of the columns and such. Okay, I'll just close this relationship stuff down for right now. We can pull it back up if we need to. Anyways, that's like the orientation to this database like system, all right, that I'm dealing with. Okay, back to some fun stuff. Okay, we're gonna do a quick, easy peasy, lemon squeezy SQL warmup. All right, super basic. We're just gonna find, well, all patients, and we don't care about patient ID and all that kind of nonsense. We just want, like, who are our patients, their actual names, and where do they live. Okay, so I'm gonna show you the syntax, and then I'll type it so you can kind of maybe stuff jumps out to you more, other than just seeing, oh, there's a slide of code. Sometimes it's like I realize that if you start typing code, sometimes people kind of pay attention to, like, the syntax a bit more. So you're going to see me kind of bounce around here and there. That's kind of the deal. So that's what I'm going to do. Let's type all this stuff in there. So I'm going to bounce over here, and here we are. All right. So we're going to be looking at the patient table. I don't have to select this. I'm just going to do that because maybe visually it orients you to what I'm going to do in a bit. All right. So in Access, we are going to skip all the kind of graphical nonsense versions of creating SQL, and we're going to write actual, structured query language code. All right. So with that in mind, I'm going to go Create. I'm going to go to Query Design, because all the cool people go to Query Design, not the Query Wizard. All right. Query Design. I don't care about graphical anything. I'm going to go it. And then this stuff, this is called QBE. All right. I don't really care about this stuff. I'm going to go to SQL View, click this thing. There's a little tiny button that I clicked on. this is how it starts it out, as like just kind of a generic select thing, okay, which I'm sure you're familiar with since hopefully you've seen all my other videos, right? Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna just type in that warm-up stuff that I mentioned, all right? So we can leave that stuff there generally. All right, so we're gonna just basically pull up all patients. So I'm gonna then say I want to see their last name, their first name, and their middle initial. That's what MI is, middle initial. And then what state do they live? State. Okay. I'm gonna press enter because we're gonna move the semicolon. You only want one semicolon at the very, very end. Okay, so that's why I press enter there. And then I'm gonna do from patient, like from the patient table. And just a quick note, like some people will put, like when they design their databases, like say it might say patients or patient. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so like in this case, none of this is plural, I guess, but that's kind of the deal. So from the patient table, like the patients that are in there. All right. So all I got to do at this stage is click on run. There we go, and boom, there is our query. Right, we got 12 people in the system apparently. Let's double check this. All right, so this is it says query 1. I'm gonna rename this. I like long-winded looking memorable query names that we can refer back to. But it's saying we only have 12 people that like go to this doctor's office, like patients wise. So let's double check. I'm gonna open up the data table here. Okay, and if you can see this little teeny tiny font over here, it also does say that there are, and this is lingo for Microsoft Access, they say there's 12 records in the patient table. Here's a full listing of all their stuff, right? I don't like using record. I don't like saying record. So there's 12 rows here. All right. And so I'm just doing this because you want to get in the habit of, like, when you write SQL, like double and probably triple check what you're doing, or make sure it makes sense. Because you can see, like, I'll show you examples later that you can do some crazy stuff and it's going to let you do crazy stuff. All right, and you don't want to do that. All right, here we go. That was that. That was this query. Just a quick, easy warm-up one, right? Okay. As you've seen in my other videos, I'm going to name all of these queries. I'm going to save them, just so, like, when you save your database, you can look at this later, so on and so forth. All right. So how you do this? I'm going to right-click here. I'm going to click on Save. I don't want it to say Query 1 because I'm not going to remember tomorrow what Query 1 was. All right. So for me, I'm going to have like a numerical, so like 01A. There's like a numerical prefix to everything that I'm doing here. And there's kind of some shorthand things I'm talking about. So anyways, I'm going to call this 01A ST for just single table warm up for all patients. All right, this most basic kind of SQL query. You shouldn't be scared already. All right, hopefully, again, if you're already sticking into this video and you have not watched my other videos, please go back and watch the other ones. All right, I don't want you mad at me, like giving me some angry YouTube comments because, like, you don't understand anything. You got to go back to the other videos. All right. Okay. Anyways, I'm gonna click on OK. And then that's that. So it saved it as whatever I typed it as, right? Now, obviously for you, if you're doing something similar, I would call your queries whatever you want to call your queries, but do something more memorable than query 1. All right. So that's that. Okay? Doing all right so far? All right. So I'm going to keep going. Now, the second warm-up one is we only want to find people from Virginia. Okay, the state of Virginia. So all you got to do, we're just going to expand upon what we did. Let me just maybe go back and forth. So query 1 was this. Look at query 2. Boom. So it's the exact same kind of base setup, but now I'm just putting in this where clause. Like, oh, where state is equal to, shorthand is VA, VA, and notice how it's in single quote marks, like such. All right. So since I'm not really doing all that much in difference, I'm just going to make this a little bit quicker. I'm just going to copy this thing. I'm going to go right click, copy. I just kind of click over here and click on paste. Puts in that query zone thing. All right. Now this one, I'm going to change up what I'm going to call this thing. I don't want to say copy of. Okay, 01B, single table, blah, 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 blah. This is dealing with only Virginia patients. All right, there we go. Created that. I'll open this thing up. Okay, this thing is opened up. Now let me change the SQL. So I'm going to go up to here, click down on this situation, go to SQL view. We don't want to go to design view. Design view is horrible. Okay, we want to go to SQL view because we're cool. All right, now all we got to do is do this. Where, because we only want to see people from Virginia. The state is equal to VA, like such. And there we go. I'm going to just run this now. Boom! Look at that. We only got people from Virginia. So, also a quick cool tip is you can, in Access, I'm just going to click this kind of like, it's super hard to see. It's this kind of light gray looking right down arrow thing or something. I'm going to click that. I'm going to just click all columns. I'm going to click right here where this thing changes to this. I'm going to double click. And then notice how it like resized all my columns to like kind of fit everything better. Because before it said like first name and it was really the first name column. So that's it. All right. This shouldn't be too impressive, I suppose, yet, because these are just warm-up exercises. Remember that. All right. There we go. And since I saved, I'd made some changes. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go right-click, save now, so that it saves all my SQL and this layout of the columns and such. And that's that so far. Okay. All right. Here we are, another warm-up one. All right. Just want to make sure that you didn't lose the understanding of the flow of how to write SQL. All right. Now, as you saw, say this query, it's like, okay, we got all the people from, from Virginia, but it's kind of like ordered, kind of obnoxious. It's like, can we see it by like, in this case, the last name, like A to Z. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have this code here. So all we have to do in this regard, we're just adding in this line here. We're just ordering it. We're gonna sort it by last name. This is ASC is short for ascending, like you're climbing up a mountain. You're in this regard, it also means like A to Z. You're like kind of going from start to finish, like you climb up the mountain kind of a thing. All right, so that's ascending. So let me switch back over here. Since I'm not changing much up, I'm going to just copy this again, or the second one. Paste. There we go. I don't want to prefix with copy of, because everything, it's like ordered alphabetically and numerically and whatnot. So this is the 01C. Same deal. I'm just going to say sorted. I'm going to just put it all in uppercase just so like when I visually look at my query names later, it's like super obvious the difference between what's going on here. So like, say if I expand this out, it's like, oh, it's the same thing, but now this is sorted, right? So in that regard, again, I did not change the SQL yet. We will do that now. And here we go. Go to SQL view. There we go. I'm going to order by the last name in ascending, ASC. There we go. That should work. I'm going to run the query. Or you know what? I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm going to go right click, datasheet view, because it means the same thing. I just want to do it different ways. That should work. So it's sorted by now the last name of the person. So they're all from Virginia, and it's sorted alphabetically, A to Z. All right. So that was it. That was just some warm-up questions. Make sure you're not totally lost before we start getting knee-deep in some new stuff. All right? Okay. Because, education, the key to education is repetition, right? Okay, here we go. Now, let's see. You've already heard a bit of my spiel regarding these SQL functions that I'm going to be going over, right? And I mentioned the ones that I'm going to be covering, like as you say, from the documentation talking about Microsoft Access. This term of aggregate comes up, and certain other documentation sources, you'll see this phrase too. Aggregate, it's just a fancy word to mean like all of the rows. It just means like everything all together, kind of a thing. All right, and so that's what these functions are doing. Okay, in this regard, the SQL functions that we're going to focus on it's like, for the most part, it's doing like calculations, effectively. That in this sense, they all kind of follow a similar theme. It's not too hard to figure out how to use one or the other depending on what you're doing. Okay, so don't be scared. We're covering 5 of them, but there's kind of a similar theme to how this all works. All right, so that's a cool thing. Is in this regard, sum. All right, sounds easy. If you sum up a bunch of numbers, what you're doing is you're just adding up all those numbers, and that's it. And how that works is it's like talking like a single column. Like add up all of this, all right? And I'll show you examples. Min is just, okay, in some sort of a query or something like that, a table or whatever, like you're just finding literally the smallest number in that column, all right? Likewise, max, find the largest number. Average, okay, you get the gist. Find the average number. In this case, if you're a statistician, you get kind of quirky when you hear average. This is talking about the mean, or if you want to get fancy with it, right? Where you add up all the values, okay, and then you divide by however many values there were, kind of a thing. Anyways, so that's kind of its like standard version of average. Is what that means. All right. Then the one that does kind of deviate from these 4 is this count function. It's still basically kind of like doing calculations, kind of. It's just literally like tallying up like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just counting however many rows there are for a certain situation, kind of a deal. The thing is, as you can see, this already highlighted, I suppose, is that all of these other functions like sum, min, max, average, stuff like that, this is like, it's only going to work on like numerical data, okay? Like it's not, if you like try to do sum on like a bunch of text values, it's like, whoa, you're going to have some chaos, all right? Because this is all just meant for like numerical calculations. Count, on the other hand, it's not like stuck into only the numerical land of how to do things, because what you're doing is you're counting how many rows like show up depending on, you'll see what I'm talking about, like how you write your SQL, all right? And at times, depending on what you're doing, you might have to use this distinct aspect as well, all right? Well, I'll show cases. I'll show examples of this, all right? So that's kind of a deeper, slightly more orientation to these different 5 functions. They're very standard across, all the other major relational database management systems. You'll see the acronym of RDBMS, right? Which no one says. They just say usually a database system, or a little more technicality, a relational database management system. So let's see. I'm going to keep on going. All right, here we go. Here's some actual stuff we're going to do. All right, so in this regard, look, I'm going to be pulling from that appointment table, and what we're curious about is like duration hours. It's tracking how long an appointment lasted. Okay, so maybe just in the system, we're just curious, like, all right, well, how many people generally did we see or something like that. That's basically what we're doing. Okay. There's a little bit more explanation that as you can kind of see here, that I need to kind of go into a little bit, because I'm going to show you how to, I'm going to write this code. You can see this, all right, that I'm going to sum up all of the duration hours, basically add up all the numbers, and they turn out to be this number, okay, 67.75. Now the thing is, though, you want to usually do this thing where what we're doing is we're creating what's referred to as an alias. Okay, I'll show you. I'll do it without this alias, and you'll see why it's preferred. Okay, the alias, what that's about is like you basically want to have something that you can remember, like when you see your output, like what are we looking at? All right. So in this regard, is you want to make it somewhat descriptive if you can. You're just making up some sort of a name here. You're just typing in whatever you feel is great, okay, and that's what's going to show up here, right? So when it says alias, like as, like this is short for as the total duration hours, okay, and use underscores, okay, don't use spaces. That's what's going to see. You're going to see here. That's why I have this arrow kind of pointing right there. All right. So let's do that. Okay. I'm going to go over to my database here. Okay. Let me pull up maybe the appointment table so you can see what I'm talking about. Here's this duration hours thing. I'm going to give myself a little more room, maybe this way. So all we're going to do, like the slide, all it's doing is it's taking like all of these numbers here, adding them all up. That's it. That's what it's doing. It's summing all of these numbers. Okay, so like 1.5 plus 1.5 plus 3.5 plus 1 plus 1. You know, like that could be kind of take you forever. And there's only, in this case, there's only 30 rows. But imagine, especially if you're dealing with a bigger system and they got like, 5,000 rows or something like that. Like, you don't want to have your job doing just manually calculating things, right? That'd be the most boring job ever and tedious. And then if you mess up, right? You don't want to do that. All right, so that's what this code is gonna do. All right, and I'll type it without this alias, and you'll see why this is like preferred usually. Okay, so there we go. I'm gonna create myself. In this case, I'm gonna create a new query. All right, I'm gonna go create. I'm gonna query design. I don't care about showing any sort of tables. I don't care about this kind of visual whatnot stuff. All right, so I'm gonna go to SQL view. Now I'm here. All right, so all we're gonna do is we're gonna select. We're gonna use this. This is the first function that you've been exposed to, right? Sum of the duration hours. Now, okay, so the slide had this as total duration hours thing. I'm gonna not type that for now. You're gonna see why we do that. And press enter. I'm going to say from the appointment table, appointment, okay, there we go. I think that works. I'm going to click on run, and look at that. We got that. Okay, so look, we got the value. Look at my slide here. Okay, the number is 67.75, right? Look at that. Oh, 67.75 in the system, but it's stored under expression 1000. The hell does that mean? Expression 1000. So that's the point. Like, you don't want to let your, and different systems do it different ways. They might literally, some systems like actually literally show you the sum of duration hours, which maybe if you're a database person, you're like, oh yeah, that sounds great. I'll just keep it like that. But like usually when you're doing stuff in a database, you are trying to, give a report to your boss or something like that. So you don't want your system reporting expression 1000 or sum of duration hours. You want to like basically explain it in a short way, somewhat short way, of like, what is this? What are you doing here? Okay, so that's the deal there. All right, so I'm gonna go back into, I'll do it this way, I guess, SQL view. And that's why we have as, okay, we're going to rename this thing, as the, I'm just typing something. You can type in whatever you want. Okay? Showcase. Blah, 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 blah. Stuff like that, right? Whatever. I'm going to click on, whatever, date sheet view. You see that nonsense is typed there, right? It's free-form text at this stage. You can alias it as whatever you think is great. Okay, in this case, it's a horrible example. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm just showing the effect of how this works, all right? So, I wanted to call it the total duration hours. All right, there we go. I'll run the query. Click that. And I'll double-click this thing like that. There we go. Okay, that's it. Total duration hours is 67.75. Same number here. And again, the whole point of this was literally go through all of this stuff in this appointment table, add up all these numbers. That's all we did. Just sum it all together. Okay? All right, that's it. Doing pretty good. Now I'm going to save this query. Again, you know, you can kind of ignore how I'm saving this thing. So I can remember, oh, this is dealing with functions, the sum one, and then I'm going to call it the appointment duration hours, and click OK. There we go. I think we're good. I'll just do save again. All right. Now the thing is, look, here's something. We're just adding up all the numbers. Now, with this in mind, so it went through this column of duration hour. We called it total duration later, okay? But we're summing up on the duration hours column, okay? So this thing here. And that sum function went through, and we told us to like add up all of these numbers, add it all up, give us whatever the result is. Okay, and we got this. All right. Now the reason I'm saying all this is I don't necessarily have a slide for every little situation we're going to do, because I want to kind of like pepper you with some questions to make sure you're paying attention. All right. So what do you think would be the process? All right. If we wanted to find, look at this. We're going back here. We want to find the smallest number here that we could either try to eyeball it, just kind of scroll down and be like, I don't know, I guess 0.75 looks kind of small. Oh, wait a minute. We got 0.5 here, right? There's 0.2. You see what I'm saying? Like, this could take forever, and you're like, maybe we might get it wrong. Maybe we just manually eyeballing this thing might not be the best process, right? So, how do you think we could find the smallest number, okay, the smallest number in a column? Obviously, I'm giving you a huge visual hint here with my mouse, right? So we're going to use this min function. We're going to find the smallest number in a column, all right? And the thing is, just a heads up, it doesn't really matter. If there's a couple of rows, okay, like say there's I know I have this thing highlighted with 0.25, but there could be a bunch of these different rows in here that also say 0.25 or whatever. I'm assuming, I think that should be the smallest. I'm going to, we'll write some SQL to double check my logic here or assessment on this regard. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to try to find the smallest number basically here in this column. Let's do it. And here's the thing. I'm not really changing all that much code. I'm just going to copy paste from this thing. So I'm going to go from the 02A thing. Copy, paste, yeah. Similar, 02B function. And we're going to talk about the min function. All right. There we go. Click over here. Open this thing up. We're going to change it. We can just click down here. Or, you know what? Actually, I'm going to go right-click, SQL view. Because, there's different ways to do things. All right. Okay. So, look. What do you think? Basically, what do we got to change? Find the smallest number there. Boom, boom, boom. Min of duration hours. And change this up because that wouldn't make sense. I'm going to say you know, shortest duration. I'll just say shortest duration, make it simpler. Shortest duration is that, and we're just using the min function now. The smallest, we want to find the smallest number in that column. Let's see, I'm going to run this, and I think we're good. Don't click that. Here we go. Shortest duration 0.25, like I thought from, you know, as you saw before, right? Here we go. That's not so bad. Okay. We'll keep on moving here. All right. That and just a forewarning, these are not as we progress further in the video. You're going to see a little more complication going on. All right. It's going to get fun and complicated. All right. Let's see. I'm going to save this thing. Save that. Now, the next question is, well, which one's the longest duration? Like, which appointment apparently lasted or could have lasted the longest time, kind of a thing. Oh, 3.5 is pretty big, and you know, blah blah. So you number 6 I see here. So that's and we can scroll around more. All right, and so that's the thing. We're going to go through this column again and find the biggest number. So once again, check this out. That's where this max function comes in. We want to find the largest number in a column. So I'll just kind of go from the last query I created. Copy, paste. This is 0 to C, dealing with max. Right, sounds good. I believe so. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click this, double click here. I got to change it up. Go to down this thing, SQL view. There we go, and we're going to change it to max. Ooh, not max. Max duration hours, not the shortest duration. It is the longest duration. All right, and I think I mentioned before, but it doesn't matter if there's like say 2 rows or whatever, or 3 rows that all have the same value. It doesn't matter as long as all of those values, if they're the highest number there, you're only going to see one of these listings. Okay, so in this case, max. I think that sounds good. I'm going to run this. So in this thing, and then I gotta resize my column output thing here. Longest duration is 9. All right. So we can manually try to find that thing, I guess. Scroll down, blah 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 blah. I guess kind of hunt eyeball-wise with our eyes. So I see 8. That seems pretty big, but the SQL query is saying this 9 is bigger, which is right here, right? And there we go. So what I was saying is, like, you could have, say, this next row also being 9, and this could be 9 and 9 and 9. You're only going to see, if you do this, it's still just only going to find, like, that's all you're going to see is just this output, because it's just looking for basically the biggest number. It doesn't matter if there's repetitive ones and stuff like that. It's just, well, what's the biggest number there? All right, that's the whole point of this max function. All right, just what's the biggest number, kind of a thing. And let's see here, right? So then, where do you think I'm going with this? I'll give you a sec. Well, all right, obviously, what's the average duration? Well, I wonder what we're going to use, right? Average. Here we go. So let's start using it. Okay, just like I've done before. Seeing this, you're like, this is super easy. Don't worry, it's going to get fun. It's going to get fun and interesting a little bit, all right? Let's see, blah, blah, blah. Call this D. This is dealing with average, right? AVG. There we go. Open this thing up. Change the SQL. Right click here. SQL view. Change. Oh, I think I didn't. Yeah, should have said Mac. I think I gotta save this thing. Anyways, doesn't matter. AVG. average duration, so this would be, you know, average duration right here, right? Make sure you change up this alias. You don't want to be lazy and mix up what you're looking at, because this is your output of what you're seeing, right? So make sure you properly do this. Save that. I think it should work fine. We could go, if you're in this kind of interface, you could also just make it like if it's on the home tab thing, you click over on design and then click run. That sounds, I guess, legit. I'm going to take its word for it. I'm not going to calculate all this myself right now, because I think the SQL seems pretty legit. Average of the duration hours looks fine, I suppose. And boom, there we go. All right. Now, last one to expose you to is this count function, right? All right. So we're going to count how many rows there are. Now, so with that in mind, all right, I'm going to make sure I'm going to save that. Copy. Paste that in, blah, 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 change this up. Again, use your own preference of how you want to call something. I'll call this 0 dealing with count. La-di-da-di-dee. Oh, you know what? Count. You could say, I guess, appointment duration hours, but I like to call my queries where it like kind of lexically makes sense. So I'm going to say count the number of scheduled appointments. All right, click on OK. There we go. Change up the query stuff here. Click down this thing. Go to SQL view. Change this to count. Like count all these duration hours. All right. And what we're doing now, just to be clear, let me see my appointment table here. Oh, you know what? Just so, because I got a bunch of these queries up, I'm going to close down some of the old ones so we don't got too much going on. So I'm going to close this thing down, the min, the max. These warm-up things we've already went through. I'm just Xing out of this stuff. Blah, blah, blah. There's that average thing. Alright, so we only got 2 tabs going on here. Alright, so what it's doing, when we use the count function, it is not, okay, to be clear, it is not doing sum. It's not like adding up all the numbers literally in here. It doesn't even care what these numbers are, necessarily. You'll see a bit of a subtlety later. Okay. In this regard, what it's doing is it's going to count, like, basically how many rows there are. Alright? So, show you. Count duration hours. Right? Same thing. I just call the query slightly different. And I'm gonna change this up different because what we're doing is we're counting the number of scheduled appointments. Here, I'll do this. I'm just clicking on this little arrow thing. If you didn't see this kind of double arrow, you can kind of hide the listing of this navigation pane thing, so you can see my kind of long-winded column name here. Number of scheduled appointments. I think that looks fine, and I can just also click here, click on datasheet view, and then I'm going to get the little kind of whatnot thing, double click that, and it says number of scheduled appointments is 30. Let's double check. Alright, so that says 30 there, and then say, looking just actually at the appointment table, it says that there are 30 rows or 30 records, same thing. Alright, so that sounds good, because what it's doing, the count function, again, is not summing up all of these numbers, because that's the point of the sum function. The count function is different. It's just literally like, oh, there was appointment number 1, and number 2, and number 3, and number 4, and number 5. It just went through this whole process and basically came up with the same number here, which is fine, because this is also the full, that's basically what we told it to do. Alright? Is like, well, how many appointments were there, effectively? And it said 30. And this is, And by the way, also, you don't want to open up your table to like figure out how many rows there are. It's just a very weird way to come up with that answer. All right. Normally, especially why you would care about doing this count function, even if you were just doing this, is like you're doing like a web application or like a mobile app or something like that, and it's like maybe it needs to know this for some reason. Okay. So that's why you would build in like kind of a design count function just to only do this, not to manually double click and kind of look at the number here. All right, you kind of get what I'm talking about. So that's what we did. I'll show you the code for that again. Again, we're just using count here. All right, and yeah, I'll run the query again, and we got 30. And again, it matched 30 records or rows, and that's that. All right. Let's see, I'll save this, open this navigation pane thing back up. Okay. Let's move on though. There's a lot more in this video, all right? So don't feel like you're bored yet. Okay. So you got the maybe before I move on, the whole point, remember again, of what we've covered generally is I showed you different functions of how this all works, like sum, min, max, average, and count. And then we had this alias going on for different reasons and da 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 and such, all right? Because that's, and they did all these different aspects. So that's your kind of gentle warming up to how to do these functions. Usually though, you want to do something beyond this. There's like a larger purpose involved with these functions. You're like, all right, that's interesting, I suppose. Maybe you actually, that's all you need to know is stuff of that kind of simple nature. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. But we're going to get into some other examples here. All right. So, what about this? Let's change it up. All right. So I'm not going to go exactly to the next slide yet. We're going to reuse this count function. Okay. So as you saw before here, this was just counting the number of scheduled appointments. Now, the kind of key word here is scheduled. All right. Now look, what I'm talking about there is I'm going to open my appointment table. Remember how I was saying that it's like maybe for some reason maybe we're not tracking the details of why, but like, did a doctor actually see a patient? Like, yeah, we have something listed in the system, but it's like, oh, so it's this one, blah, blah, blah. Doctor ID 1, saw patient ID 1 on this time, date and such, for this long or whatever. And it's like, yeah, they actually saw this patient. That's why there's like a check mark thing. It's like, yes, they actually saw that patient. Okay. Or another way of saying this, true. Okay. Or an axis, they like saying yes. But I like true because it's like more other systems like true and false and stuff. And anyhow, but look at this next one here. It's like, well, doctor ID, and then it was scheduled for doctor ID 1 to see patient ID 2 on such and such date and time for this long, but they did not actually see that patient. All right. So let's change it up a bit, because it's like, well, wait a minute. We get that there's like, I guess 30 scheduled appointments effectively, but like you can't really easily eyeball like how many patients were like in generally totally seen. Okay, so let's do that. We're gonna count on, we're more interested in this column now. All right, so that's why I have this highlighted. So let me show you. I'll just kind of copy and paste from this one though. It might be slightly quicker. Copy and paste from the last one. Paste from here. I'm going to call this 02F. Still the count function thing. And it's not number of scheduled appointments, it's number of patients seen. Alright? Seen. Okay, and click OK. Alright, that created that. Open that up. I'm going to change the SQL. Click over here. Alright, let's see. I'm going to do this like that. So in this case, I'm going to change it up. I'm going to count by, again, we're interested in this patient seen aspect. Alright. I'm going to call it, for the, instead of seeing expression 1000 or something obnoxious, I'm going to say, well, like number, like basically number of patients seen is how you can interpret that. And we're getting it from the appointment table. Now that doesn't solve, that shouldn't solve all the problems. Let me see, I'm going to run this. It still says 30. You're like, wait a minute. And you'll understand count. I'll explain some minutia to how count works a bit later. All right, we're still seeing 30. We don't want to see that. We want to see, like, again, from the appointment table, like basically how many have like a check mark. You don't want to manually go through here and like, I don't know, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, blah. That's going to take, it's annoying. You don't have to do that. So go back to here. We got to change up the query now. All right, and this will make sense from how the warm-up was kind of set up as. Because notice how appointment, patient seen, there's like true, false, true, 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 false, stuff like that, right? That's basically the gist of what we're doing. All right. So then we're going to add that in there. We're going to be like, well, okay, for the query we care about, number of patients seen, we're going to base that upon count patient seen thing, where the patient seen column is equal to true. All right. There's different ways to write this in Access. I don't know. I'm kind of partial to saying true. I find that the most kind of computer science, like, best way to kind of go about it. All right. Anyhow, where the patient seen is equals true. Okay. Notice I don't have quotes. This is just true by itself. Okay. This is a value though. I'm going to now go to design, click on run. Whoa, look at that. Got a different number. It did not say 30. Okay, as a reminder. This is the old other query. The number of scheduled appointments, but it's like, yeah, I guess scheduled, but like how many, basically how many appointments have actually occurred is just 21. All right, so that's what is kind of neat already. We're expanding upon using these SQL functions to make our life a lot easier. All right, it's not as scary once you kind of learn some of the fundamentals of how this all works. All right, and yeah. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to save that. That looks pretty good. I'll run that again so you see that again. All right, and such. All right, let's kind of keep going here. All right, you ready? All right, here we go. Let's see. I'm going to move past on my slide deck here. Boom, boom. All right. This is what I'm talking about. This whole count and such. All right, is what I'm showing here is like, all right, when you're dealing with that count function, it definitely cares if there's what's referred to as null values. Okay, if you're not fully versed on all these terminologies and such, what that's about, okay, a null value in kind of the simplest explanation is it's basically a blank value in a cell. So like here, look at this. Is like this is the doctor's table. I'll pull it up too because you can kind of double check my slides and stuff. But like in the doctor table, all right, this is the actual whole table here, is we actually do have 5 doctors. But look, only 4 of them actually have middle initials. Because, you know, some people just don't have middle initials. They don't, like, actually have a middle name. And so that's what's going on here. All right. So the only thing is, though, if you have a blank value in a database, like a data table, all right, it gets kind of quirky when you're dealing with some, like, SQL. and such, like if you don't think about like dealing with null values, basically blank values, you might have strange results. So you got to kind of make sense of based on this. At the same time, though, it might be actually useful information, like knowing that, like, oh, of course, yeah, like we get it, blah 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 blah. Okay, so let me see. I'm gonna pull up that table, that doctor table. Go over here. Here's that doctor table. I will minimize that thing. You see the same thing from the slides. I'm just showing you. You know, here's from the doctor table. Okay. Let's see. I don't need these other stuff up for now. I'll just kind of close this down. I got too much going on right now. There we go. So now we're just seeing the doctor table, just like from the slide. So this, you know, Julia Fernandez does not have a middle initial, is what this is telling us. Or hopefully that's the case. Maybe we have it wrong in the system, but according to our database, she does not have a middle initial. Okay, that's what a null value is. It's a missing value, which might be useful in and of itself, but sometimes the system treats null values kind of weird. All right, so look at this. As you saw me doing before, okay, this might feel natural to do it this way, but you got to be a little careful at times. All right, so what I'm saying is, like, if you count on some column, like I was just doing, right, like with the duration hours or that patient scene column thing, okay, the other queries I went over, is if it ever runs across like a row in whatever column you're dealing with, and it has a blank value, it's not zero, it's like there's like nothing there. Okay, it's not a space, it's like blank, it's just like not there, it's like missing. Well, if you count some column and it runs across a null value, okay, it will actually not be counted in that total. So look at this query that I'm talking about. If we do select count of, and this is for the middle initial, and we say, oh, as the number of docs with middle initials, is kind of a weird query, I guess, but whatever, right? Like in this case, we're just counting basically how many doctors have middle initials, right? From the doctor table, and it says 4. I will run this query, but let me back up just real quick. Again, the doctor table, we actually have 5 doctors, but if we do the query that I just showed you, you got to be careful. Maybe this is exactly what you want, I guess it seems from my query here, but in this regard, you have to be careful that if you count on any column, whatever column it is, that if it runs across a blank value, it's not in the tally. It's not like 1, 2, 3. It just skips over it. All right. So look, I'm going to do that query. Okay. Go over here. Let's see here. I'll just kind of go copy paste from the last thing. Copy, paste here. Moving along here, 0 to G. Count, let's say number of doctors with middle initial. Alright, I think that looks alright. Click OK. Open that up. I'm going to change it. SQL. I'm going to say count. Again, the slide I had it is, we're going to count the middle initial. Let's see. Give me some more room here. As number of docs with middle initial. Alright. Oh, and this one, I don't need this where patient scene equals true kind of stuff, right? So I'll get rid of that. I'll press delete, get my, where's my thing? I need my semicolon there. Boom, add that thing back. Alright, so I think that's the same query. Select, we're going to count how many doctors have middle initials. It may not be the most practical query, but this is the effect of what we're dealing with. Alright, and we can see, so again, doctor, this is the whole table. I'm going to run the query. Click back over here. I'm going to run this query now. Alright, so let's see, I'm going to click on this little thing over here called datasheet view. Let's see. Oh, you know what? Haha. Yeah, you know what? Before I move on, so whatever, datasheet viewer, click this. If you ever run into this, okay, I've mentioned this before in other videos, but since I've naturally run into it at this stage, might as well explain it now. Is if you ever get this and you were not expecting this, it means you basically have a typo or something. You're doing something weird in your SQL. All right. It may seem legit of what I typed here. The problem is, since I copy pasted from another query, I got to be careful because I want to count like doctors that basically have a middle initial. But look, from the old query I copied from, it was referencing this appointment table, and this is why it's like what are you talking about? There's no MI like for middle initial in the appointment table. So I'm gonna be like, watch. I'm gonna click OK, and it's gonna give us like 0. What is that supposed to mean, right? Well, there's nothing there. Well, that's not what we're dealing with. All right, we did something wrong. If you ever get that dialogue, it's like blah 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 blah. You did something wrong, so it's fine. I did something wrong here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. If I open up the appointment table, there's kind of a bunch going on here, but notice there's no column here that I'm highlighting with it called like MI, because that's in the doctor table. So in that case, look, I'm going to go over here. I need to change my query to where it says from the doctor table. That should work. I'm going to close appointment down. Okay, now I'm going to run the query. I'll just do it like I did before. Datasheet view over here. And boom, we got the same thing that I'm showing my slides now. Look at that. This one finally says 4, not 0 like I showed you before. 4. We want to see number of docs with a middle initial is 4. I was like, yeah, all right. That sounds great because we know what we're doing. We understand null values. Everybody knows about null values, right? Well, now you do. All right. So that's what's going on, because we had 5 doctors, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One of them does not have a middle initial. So then, therefore, hence, therefore, and thus, we only have 4. Okay. All right. So you're learning quite a lot so far. All right. So that's just there. Now, let's see here. I'm going to keep on going. Well, here's some more syntax to know. I'm going to progress the slide forward. Boom. That. Here we are. Here's, oftentimes you may just want to just use this thing. Okay. We're going to put like, it looks a little weird. We're going to count, and it's like asterisk. Okay. It's a star symbol thing. What we're doing is like, regardless of what we're dealing with, whatever kind of table or whatever, it basically just ignores if there's null values. It's like it has no impact on it whatsoever. As long as like rows will show up in our query or, you know, kind of a thing, like it's going to count that. So in this case, look at the query that I designed here is, in this case, I'm not referencing that middle initial column, right? So in this regard, we're just like counting basically all rows of doctor is effectively what we're doing, of the doctor table. And we're going to have an alias as, you know, number of doctors. This is what we're doing. We should have 5. Okay. And that's that. So I'm going to go back over to here. Let's see, I'm going to expand my navigation pane thing. That should be saved. Double check. Over here. All right. So let's see here. Copy. Paste. Super long. I know. This makes me makes it easier for me to see. All right. Count of number of doctors. Number of doctors. I don't care if they have a middle initial or not. So that's what I'm going to call this thing. Click on OK. Let's see, open that thing up. Go into SQL view. Now we just wanted to see. I'm going to switch this up. Count asterisk. Number of. Get rid of this stuff. Number of doctors. I think that should work. Let's check. Click on run. Sounds good. So I'm always double clicking, but you can also just manually kind of click and make this wider or whatever. It's just when you double click, you're like, it's just like kind of a quick, I guess now it was happy, whatever. Anyways, so I made my column bigger so you can see what it's looking at. So it says number of doctors is 5. That's what it says here, because that's all we're doing. We're just counting basically all the rows that show up from the doctor table, because we don't have any other conditions going on. It's just like what's all in there. Okay, it's the same effect of, like, again, if you pull up the doctor table and you look at, like, ooh, what's this little number here? It says 5. That's what we should get. Okay, so I'm just double checking, and yeah, it says 5. All right, so not so bad, but that's the thing. You got to be careful that maybe you do want this star syntax. Sometimes, though, actually, maybe you do want to ignore. If I went back in the slides here, you might actually want to ignore if there are null values. So that's where this kind of syntax could be useful for you. Okay, there can be some subtleties in that sort of situation. Okay. Now, let's see here. Cover that. Talking about the star thing, right? Null values. We don't care about it. Now, we're going to keep going. Here's some more syntax. This is some new SQL syntax that I'm introducing you to. Okay, so, and the reason why you might want to use this thing called group by is, think of it like this. As you can see, like this. You're trying to, like, basically group by, like, a category or like a subtotal of something. Like if you're on you buy stuff at a store and there's like, oh, you know, it's like a subtotal thing and eventually grand total. So like that's what we're kind of doing. We're grouping things down into something, all right, something that we're trying to group it into, all right. So in this case, you can see this kind of question I have over here, but dealing with the doctor stuff, like maybe they're interested in, like, you know what, we really need to, like, grow our patient, like where our patients come from, like where do we need to expand our operations. Now obviously this is kind of a small doctor's office, but if you're dealing with a much larger one, the query that I'm going to show you how to create this might be quite informative of, like, oh, you know what, maybe we need to, like, advertise in Maryland more. This is short for Maryland, that we only have one patient from there. Like, how can we expand our operations there, or whatever. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with here. Okay, so we want to know, again, the point is we want to know what which state each patient lives in. All right, and I'm going to show you how to use this group by. You want to sound fancy, say it's a group by clause. All right, almost sounds like legalese. Anyways, group by is the main point. Okay, so here we go. That this is the syntax of how to create this query from the, you know, the database that I'm dealing with here. A little bit of explanation is involved, though. All right, because before we use that count function, and you could use count star, some of the previous examples, and we've basically done the same thing. Okay, here I'm using that in this regard because I just want to count how many patients there are, and I don't want to get tripped up accidentally on some null value thing, like if I chose some certain column. So I'm just going to, like, anything from this patient table, like count them up. But we're going to group it by based on what state they're on. So that's what the whole gist is here. Okay, so what this is saying is we have 3 patients from Washington, D.C., we have 1 patient from Maryland, and we have 8 patients from the state of Virginia. Okay, so that's what that is talking about. Now you can see my kind of font stuff in red. It's more of a warning, kind of alert you, like eyeballs kind of here, kind of a thing. The syntax of how this works, you're going to see how this plays out a little bit later. All right, but notice how it says, like, select, I want to see the state column, that's why we said that, comma, and then count things up, and alias as number of patients, and we're going to group by the state, and so that's why these numbers, it's counting, again, how many patients are in each state. But when we do this, when we do this group by thing, okay, that kind of the short rule of thumb on this situation is we're using this SQL function over here, all right? But basically any column that is like not part of this situation, you put it here. You're going to see how this plays out a little bit more, but that's the summary of what I'm saying here, all right? So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to create this query, all right? So I'm going to go over to my database. All right. I'm going to... I'm just going to create a whole new query, so you don't have to see a bunch of edits and such. There we go. I don't care about this view. Design view obnoxiousness. All right. Here we are. We're going to, you saw, select the state of where people are from, and we want to count all of the patients. I'm going to call it as number of patients. Okay. From, now this is, we're going to get it from the patient table, all right, to be clear. And we're going to then group by the state of like where each person comes from. All right, and that should hopefully work. Let's try that out and run this down. There we are. Yeah, there we go. So this is like DC, so 318. And this one also says 318. And there we go. So I got my query to work. And that's the gist. That's how you do using this group by thing. And you can see how that can be pretty informative depending on, and maybe it sounds like a simple question, but if you have a lot of patients, this could save you a lot of time. All right. That's that. I'm going to then save this query. Moving up to number 3 finally. It's like find this section kind of a deal. Group by the patients in each state. Click OK. That sounds good. I think it's good. I'll just double click save that again. And there we are. All right. All right. So we're getting quite far along so far. Okay. Let's see. I'll just save my database. Just double check. Okay. Let's go explore into some more things though. Hopefully you feel a little bit comfortable with this. You may want to pause it if you want to take a break or something like that, because we're gonna get a little bit crazier now. All right.
All right. So so now that you have a bit of exposure dealing with this group by aspect, you're going to see how this becomes also very useful and basically essential when we're trying to do something a little more complicated, such as how I'm trying to summarize this is, so far I've been touching on the basics of SQL functions, especially say aggregate SQL functions, which work on all like a whole set of rows that are part of a query, right? So when we're doing one of those types of functions, such as like max or count, sum, things like that, right? That when we want that function to affect something, not just one table, like a single table, but what's referred to as a multi-table query, all right, where you're basically recombining the data tables to kind of make more, you know, to have a more elaborate information, to make it more readable, things of that nature, you know, for any reports that you might create. And so you're going to see how this is essential, all right? Now, again, I've already made a whole video talking about SQL multi-table queries, so hopefully you've already seen that, because I'm going to sprinkle some warm-up questions on that regard, just to refresh your memory of how everything works. But we're gonna keep on moving beyond that. All right. But before we get into the thick of it, one of my favorite topics, which apparently is a lot of people don't think is important, which is very surprising to me actually, is this topic regarding an entity relationship diagram, or an ERD. An ERD is effectively like a map of your database. Okay, it's showing how the tables, you might have, in this case I'm only showing 4 tables, but especially if a more complication going on, a lot of tables, 10, 15, 20, you're going to want an ERD. And if you don't have one, like wherever you're working at or wherever you're, you need to get them to get their act together, right? It's kind of chaos to me. Because one of the things I try to, the reason why this is important is, imagine you saved up, your life savings, and you have a dream house in mind.
So you find somebody that claims to have been building houses for years and years.
And they got it. So you give them your money, right? And they start building up your dream house. And you're like, all right, sounds great. A couple weeks go by. And you're like, hey, I just want to check the progress, how you going. You kind of feel a little like, I don't know, what are you doing exactly? Like, do you know what you're doing? And then you just ask the person, hey, can you show me your blueprint? And the person responds, well, I don't need a blueprint. I'm an expert. I'm good. And, so how comfortable do you feel that this so-called expert is building up, wasting, hopefully not, but probably will, wasting all your life savings and spending lots of time because they're just basically winging it, all right? That's effectively what tends to happen that's out there. Anyways, that's my 2 cents in the situation, but I'm going to also show you why this is super practical, why you want to do this anytime you're dealing with multi-table queries. Because it honestly just makes it so much easier to write your SQL code, right? The fun part everybody likes getting into. All right, so with that in mind, check this out. This is I showed you this earlier, right? This is the ERD, the Entity Relationship Diagram, of how Microsoft Access does it. I kind of critiqued their notation scheme a little bit. I'm not the biggest fan of it. This one's not as terrible as I've seen some other ones, so it's not bad. It's just I'm usually a bigger fan of what's referred to as crow's foot notation. I'm not going to spend much time on that in this video. All right, I might make more to expand upon this for you later. But anyhow, to refresh your memory on the sample database that I have here, right? So I have 4 different tables: doctor, appointment, patient, and insurance, right, for a small doctor's office. Now, what we're doing is, and why you even care about this, especially when you start getting to the fun SQL stuff, well, if you can just see how things are connected, that just saves half of your half the battle right there. Okay, so that's what I want you to focus on in this regard. Okay, is that, look how, for instance, how the doctor table is connected to the appointment table. All right, because look, that it goes from, you'll see the code, it'll look like this. It'll say like doctor dot doctor ID, the column doctor ID. So doctor dot doctor ID is connected to the appointment dot doctor ID column. Okay, then when we go from the appointment table to the patient table, it switches up a bit. It actually goes from appointment dot patient ID to the patient dot patient ID column. Okay. Then when we're connecting patient to insurance, like what insurance company a patient uses, all right, it's going like this. It's going patient dot insurance ID to insurance dot insurance ID. Maybe it sounds a little repetitive when you speak it audibly, but you're going to see in code there you need to write this down properly, because you just have to do this. All right, you don't want to create chaos reports, chaos queries, right? So that's what we're going to be working with. Okay, so hopefully you trust me on this process, because boom, look at this. Oh my goodness, look at all this scary looking stuff here. That this is just a warm-up exercise. All right, all we're going to do, even though I'm not the hugest fan of using the select star thing, from earlier videos I mentioned that if you're doing anything way more serious, you don't want to get in the habit of using this. This is just like a quick one-off thing. And that's what we're doing right now. I'm just doing a quick warm-up thing. All right. Anyways, we're gonna select all properly, because you can't just like, well, I want to give me all the columns from every table. You have to do it to remind you. You have to do it in a proper fashion where basically the tables join together, where the data like kind of syncs up correctly. All right. So that's the flow. Remember how I was telling you about? Look at how all this kind of, and you're gonna see this on a lot of other slides. Anytime I have like this yellow highlighted thing with the black text here, that's the relationships that we're dealing with. Like in this case, I'm writing it from primary key to foreign key effectively, or realistically, I'm writing it from like left to right, just because like if I back up, it's just easier for me when I'm writing code or something like that. The SQL is just follow it with my eyeballs. Like, let's start with the left-hand side and go to the right-hand side. So then, therefore, okay, doctor.doctor ID connects with appointment.doctor ID. Let me go forward. See this? Doctor.doctor ID is equal to the appointment.doctor ID. That's where the tables connect. Okay, that's the relationship defined in the system. And to refresh your memory, the syntax of what's going on here, when you see, I prefer to write it like this. Anytime I refer to a table, I have it in this title case format where it's like an uppercase starting letter, and then everything else is lowercase. But regardless of my preferred way, and then all column names are all lowercase. They should only be using underscore characters for spacing out different words or whatever. But the format generally works like this. Like it's saying table dot column name, and equal to, this is a different table dot column. All right. So that's the general format. The rest of the flow that you can see here is just all I'm doing is I'm just following this ERD, this map of the system, because it's how everything should connect properly. Okay. So you could, so doctor.doctor ID connects to appointment.doctor ID, and then it switches from appointment.patient ID to the patient table.patient ID, and so forth, right? And that's what all in code form is, all this situation. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to then, to reinforce everything here, I'm going to just start typing this stuff in here. I know you see it on a slide. You'll see the effect of this. All right, let me go to access. All right. Here we go. And if you're wondering, I just had these like selected in this way because this is referred to as a composite primary key, basically. Anyways, moving past that, just so you can see that it's kind of an interesting setup here. But let's go to the code stuff. All right, so I'm going to just create a new query design. I don't care about this QBE, query by example stuff. SQL zone. There we are, and here we go. So I'm gonna get rid of my semicolon for the time being. Here we're gonna go select star, which way you kind of say this. Select all columns from the doctor table, the appointment table, patient table, and the insurance table. I don't have a comma at the very end there. Press enter, and then where this is our join conditions. How does the data make sense between the two tables? Right. So in that case, doctor ID connects to the appointment table. Appointment.doctor ID, and so forth. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the we're switching it up. Appointment dot patient ID connects with the patient table. Patient ID. All right. And we have one more. 1, 2, 3, 4, and lastly, the patient table connects. Let's see, from the insurance ID. Is equal to the insurance ID. Hopefully I spelled everything right. Let's cross our fingers. There's a lot of code going on. right? All right, let's try it. We're running it. Looks pretty good. I can get some weird dialogue thing popping up. The thing when you do the select all, especially when we have, you see here, it's literally made like this query thing of like all of the data is properly, when we look at this query thing, it's all proper. It's just there are so many things going on. Look at all these columns, da 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 da, all of these ones, da 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 da, and they can be kind of long, like wide for each thing. So let me go back to this thing. So some of these columns, I could like adjust this, so you can see like doctor ID, but that, you know, to even fit all this on one thing, does it this way. Also, the reason why access, by the way, is showing, say, doctor ID, whereas say here it doesn't start out with doctor dot hired date or something like that. The reason why is we actually have this doctor ID column on different tables, okay, which you could remember from this slide here. Like there's doctor ID, and then there's doctor ID over here, okay, and so we have to be kind of specific to differentiate, well, which doctor ID column you're talking about. So that's why in this case, that's why it's also showing that for us. Whereas this column, hired date, hired underscore date, there's no other, click over here, there's no other table out here that says hired date. The only one that has that mention is only in the doctor table. So the system is not confused. Oh, what table, what column, you know, where is this column from what table? Okay, so that's why in the query you'll see stuff of that nature. All right, and you'll also see a little bit later on, you have to differentiate that table dot column format. If there's two tables that also have that exact same name, and you're trying to talk to those tables specifically, you'll see more later, other than what I've just showed you here, of where that's essential. Okay, and then I think that's good to go. Let me just do my long-winded query name thing, save it this thing, right? So let's see here. I will call this 04A MT, short for multi-table. This is just a hopefully easy warm-up exercise. We are selecting all properly. Go. All right, sounds good. All right, check this out. We're gonna go to a kind of an interesting query. All right, let me maybe show you this. Okay, before I start showing slides and all that kind of stuff, is check out the insurance table. I'm gonna open that up. Let me bring this back over here so you can see better and not be distracted. So in this case, look, in the system, it seems kind of simple. We have 5 different insurance companies, right, that we have out there. And this is the reason why the doctor's office, it's like these are the companies they deal with, apparently, things like that or something, right? So they're like on the in-network with these particular insurance companies or whatever. So that's why they have it in the system. The thing, though, is I'm going to create this query. What if we're just interested in, like, well, are all the patients actually using, like, all of these insurance companies? Or, like, you know, this is a small doctor's office. Now, there's not a lot of people that come to this thing. So maybe they're just interested, like, hey, of the patients that we have now, are they actually all using every, you know, does somebody have, like, collectively, are all these insurance companies actually used in some regard? All right, and what you're gonna see is actually not. Okay, what I'm getting at is this. Like if we open up the, say, the patient table, right? Make that go here. So we have, you know, patient names and so on and so forth, blah 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 blah, and they all have different. They're linked with different insurance companies, right? Shorten that down. So we're gonna create a query to figure out, like, is everybody actually using this stuff? All right, so that's kind of the setup of what I'm talking about. All right, let me let's try to just maybe walk through some of these aspects. All right, because I have a slide with the full solution, but maybe it'll be more interesting to see how things kind of play out in general, right? So again, the purpose, we want to figure out between patients between patients and the insurance table, okay, which what insurance companies they're using, and then eventually which ones are actually used. Okay, so in that case, when we're doing a query like that, a multi-table query, in this regard, we're going to talk to the patient to the insurance table. And the way that works is patient.insurance ID connects with insurance.insurance ID. All right, so let me just do this. I'm going to create another query here. All right, so far I'll put this stuff. We'll switch to SQL view. I'm going to, when all we're interested in apparently is just, well, we just need to know the insurance, right here. There's my relationship stuff. We just want to see the insurance company name. Like, say I click on the table. We just want to see the company name. We don't care about anything else, phone numbers and stuff. So we're just like, all right, the insurance company. That's what we want to see. We don't really care. We don't care to list the patient name. We just want to know like what insurance companies we're dealing with. All right, on a regular basis or whatever. And we're going to get that from the patient table and then also the insurance table. We're, we got to connect the two to figure out who has what insurance. Right. That's what I'm trying to set up here. And then we got to join it properly. Right. Look at your ERD one more time. We go from patient.insurance ID to insurance.insurance ID. Okay, so that's why ERDs are hugely useful. Where patient.insurance ID is equal to the insurance.insurance ID. Make sure I'm typing everything correct. Okay, now watch this. I think it all looks fine. Let's try to run this query. Run this thing up. So we got a query going on. You're like, why does it look this way, right? I mean, we could even do this maybe. If we go to say query, we could change it up maybe so you could see why we're seeing this. So we see the insurance company name, but let's see like, well, what's this patient name stuff? So like, what do we have? What is it called? They are between these tables. We'll just put last name. We'll just include last name, I guess. Last name. Yeah, we'll just go with that for now. Okay. Then I can just click this thing, just datasheet view. Boom. So you can see why in this case, this is showing us, well, what patient has what company. That's why when we only saw only this column, you're like, why am I seeing repetitive looking things? It's actually not repetitive. In this case, okay, hopefully, right? We don't want like a bad database structure. In this case, there's nothing wrong with our database, okay? It's depicting what we tell it to do, all right? So last name of Weber has Blue Cross Blue Shield, Lopez, same thing, da-da-da-da-da. And like, okay, I get the gist, I guess, and this is what we got going on, I guess. But all we care about, again, the purpose is we don't need to see the same insurance company listed. We don't even care about who has them. We just want to know like what insurance companies do we deal with currently, like normally, like what patient has what company, but we don't really care about all this other stuff. All right. So, like what I'm saying is we only need to see if there's one person, like one or many different patients that have Blue Cross Blue Shield. All we care about is seeing Blue Cross Blue Shield once, not a bunch of other things. Okay. So the effect of that works like this. Okay, first and foremost, I am going to go to SQL. I'm going to get rid of the last name so we don't confuse ourselves later. So then I'll just go back. All we're seeing is just the insurance company names, right? Now we're going to basically filter it down where we're filtering out redundant looking rows. It looks like it's repeated, but it's for a good reason. But in our case, all we care about is just seeing each company listed once, all right? So that's where, check this out. If you, I remember I talked about it a little bit before in some of my earlier videos, but this is where it really also starts to shine. Is check this out. We're going to use this special little keyword here called distinct. All right, I spelled that right. Distinct. What this does is what I just said. I'm going to run this. Boom! It just filtered this down. It did not delete anything or something like that. It's just making it visually kind of filter out for what we're interested in. We're asking the question, basically, which insurance companies are used, and we don't care to see the same name listed a bunch of times. Now, one of the things, though, that should dawn on you when you look at this is, look at this, that we only see 4 insurance companies, right? But like I was talking some time ago, look at the insurance company table. We actually have 5. We have 5 total insurance companies, so then it's like, they're not all used. Okay, so in this case, we can see that, say, we're just kind of eyeballing it right now, since we don't, maybe this is the report, all we care about is these are the companies that are used. And you can see, oh, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Cigna, Humana, Kaiser Permanente, but as we notice, we don't see actually United Healthcare, all right? I believe, yeah. So they're not showing up. So what that's saying, and we could double check, all right, let me see here. So the insurance ID is number 5 for United Healthcare. We can even go through the patient table just kind of quickly manually here. And we can just kind of scan through here, like what insurance company they use. Nobody should have number 5 there. All right, and I don't see anybody with number 5. So that's why that's what this query is doing. All right. So this is just a warm-up type SQL example, but I thought it was kind of interesting too. Even just, it doesn't seem that long, but the subtlety of what we just did is pretty interesting. You know, can be pretty useful. Let's see. Let me save this as 04B MT from multi-table. It's just a warm-up. Insurance companies. Insurance companies actually used by patients. Okay. So one of the reasons I also have these long-winded kind of names is not only it helps me remember later when I look back at this database of what we're doing, or why I created it. When you create your, you don't have to be as long as me, but since I'm presenting this in a kind of a lecture form here, I also want you to see, as you're following along in the video, you can see which kind of tab is opened up, and you can kind of remember, like, what was he talking about? Why was, you know, so you can get the kind of summary of what this is as well. That's why I also kind of name things very kind of long-winded. All right. So, okay. We're going to keep on going. All right. Let's see. So the query number 2, this is the answer. Okay. That's what we just did. We use that distinct thing. All right. And again, anything that's like highlighted yellow with black, with a black font, that is, I'm just doing that in a visual sense so you can see the relationships of how you know, the proper join conditions and such. Okay. Okay, now let's go on to another kind of question that we might be interested in. Okay, so we're going to move beyond. This is not a warm-up question, to be clear. Okay, that in this case, say for instance, we had this basic kind of curiosity, such as like on the system, you know, which doctor had the longest appointment scheduled, okay? Meaning like maybe they didn't actually go and see the patient or not, but like on the system, was there like, you know, some doctor had like a 5-hour scheduled appointment for something, or a 10-hour or whatever, just like, we're just curious what these really long ones might be, okay? So in that regard, all we care about, and we don't really care about the patient name involved or something like that for now. The question, all we're curious about is just number-wise, for some reason, okay? This is more of also kind of see the effect of how code works out, but this is, you know, addressing this question that I'm posing here, okay? So in that case, all we care about is the relationship between the doctor and appointment table, because that's, we want to know the doctor, like the doctor's name and how long things, I guess under duration hours, okay, how long things were scheduled, okay. So that's what we're dealing with. So in this case, we care about the relationship between doctor.doctorID to appointment.doctorID, all right? So like this, I'm saying it's like a chain of the two tables, a chain, or the more proper way is you call it a relationship. And if you've been wondering, if you're not 100% clear, an entity, it's a fancy way. It gets a little more philosophical than this. Some extreme database people might get a little mad at me, but in simple form, an entity is basically known as a table, is the kind of the easiest way to think about it. So we have an entity relationship, and this is a diagram. So that's why it's called an entity relationship diagram. All right. Okay. Anyways, that's how the two tables connect. Like I just mentioned, doctor.doctorID is equal to the appointment.doctorID. Okay. Now, look at this. Look at this awesome looking code going on here. Remember how I was trying to explain the setup some slides ago, talking about when we're doing something a little more advanced, such as like an SQL function, and at the same time we want to do a multi-table query. Like we want to find the biggest like scheduled appointment time. All right. So look at this. We're going to be using this max thing because like for each doctor, we just want to know like what was the biggest scheduled appointment that they had. Right. And like you could kind of jump your eyes down here like, oh, that's kind of interesting that Dr. Smithson had a 9-hour appointment scheduled for some reason. And then there was like, Dr. Fernandez only had, well, not only, but and they had an 8-hour appointment scheduled. But then you have like folks like Dr. Gupta, the longest one on record that they had scheduled was 3.5. It's not like that's a short time, but it's just kind of interesting. Like, why would somebody have a 9-hour appointment block? Like, is that what's going on there? All right, intense surgery, or I don't know, right? But I'm gonna start typing all this, right? You can see, and this is the effect of what we're gonna see. But the what we're doing here, this group by, okay, we need to use this group by aspect when we are doing this situation SQL function and a multi-table query. Okay. Now again, like I was saying, the general rule of thumb is when we're doing this, when we're using say a max or something like that, and notice that in this case I have two regular style columns, like the last name and first name of the doctor, okay, and then we want to find their biggest scheduled duration time, whatever that's on the system, right? But it says select last name comma first name, and then it says that max thing. But look right here, it also says group by last name first name. So whenever you use this, like whatever columns you list here, you need to group by the same exact columns here, like not including the function. Okay, you just have to do it. You'll see what I'm talking about. All right, we'll try it without it, and the system is gonna yell at me. All right, and as you can already see here, the way that this is gonna work is this is accurate, but maybe we want to sort this later, which we'll do a little bit in a bit. Okay, so with that in mind, let's go ahead and run this query. All right, so come over here. I'm gonna create me another query. Query design. Showing tables here, SQL view. All right, you saw the code. I'm going to type it all out now. You want to select the last name, the first name of the doctor, and then their biggest duration hours. They're just listed out there. I have a nice little alias as the longest appointment scheduled. All right, then we're going to get it from the doctor table and the appointment table. Notice I don't use that and thing. I'm using a comma. All right, to basically mean that. The join conditions we care about and a tip for you, I would always start with the join conditions before you start filtering in anything else with a where type situation. All right. So the join condition we have is where the doctor ID is equal to, like it's connected in this regard, the appointment doctor ID. Okay. I'll leave it like that. You know what? What? Look, you may not believe me. You're like, I don't. We need this group by thing. It seems like I don't want to do that. So I'm gonna not do it for the time being. Watch. Let's see. I'm gonna try running this thing. Oh, it says. You can read this. It says your query does not include the specified expression last name as part of an aggregate function. You could look up the help and blah 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 blah. All right. What does that mean? Also, anytime you ever get an error message, not just in Microsoft Access or whatever, and you're just confused about what to do, maybe I'll just run this again. My big tip for you is literally just search for this error message, like this exact error message. Try to understand it, click their help file, try to read up on it, like try to figure out like what is it talking about. You should be able to teach yourself how to get around these problems. You need to self kind of troubleshoot on this stuff, all right? Because that's just a common task. You gotta be aware of, all right? But I'll just tell you the answer. You've already seen the answer, all right? We need to then group by the other columns that are not an SQL function, all right? So group by the last name, comma, first name, because that's how we did it up here. Okay, the same thing here. This should hopefully work. We'll run that, and it looks pretty good. I'm just going to kind of resize the columns quickly. Hopefully that looks alright-ish. I think it's the same flow here. All right, like 8, 3.5, 6, 9, 5.5. Yeah, I think that's all the same. So there we go. So we got that down. Okay. Hopefully that makes a bit more sense. I'm going to save this query as we're up to big number 5 here. 05A. It's a multi-table function. That's what I'm doing with an FN there. Multi-table function. Longest appointment scheduled per doctor. I'm going to just big text here, unsorted, which is implying we're going to then sort it. All right. So hopefully you might already have an idea of how we might sort it. And in this case, we want to sort it not by the doctor's last name. Maybe we could do that too later or something. But in this case, all we care to do, we want to sort it by like the number here, like highest to lowest. That's what we're more interested in. So the way to do that is like such. We need to order by, in this case we want to do it by this thing here. All right. And this is where one of the situations Microsoft Access kind of drives me nuts a little bit. Is even though we created this alias of longest appointment scheduled, Microsoft Access gets a little obnoxious in this regard because we can't use that alias here. I don't know why. Okay. Because other systems let you use the alias that you created. So they need to work on that. They need to fix that because it drives me nuts. All right. But in Microsoft Access, you have to repeat whatever you did here. You have to repeat that situation here. All right. So I'm going to put that in. Go. And all I want to do, you know what? I don't have to reinvent the wheel here. The wheel. I'm going to just copy and paste this query that I created, the 05A thing. Right. Let's see. Copy. Paste. This one will be sorted. Let's get rid of that. And then I got to change up the prefix thing. 05B. I think that looks alright-ish. Let's put this thing down. Open that up. All seems fine. Okay. I'll go into right-click this thing, SQL view. There we go. All right. So the only thing I wanted to add in is sort it by that the digits, the numerical portion, high to low. So the way we do that is we're going to order by this, like this whole thing, okay, the max duration hours. We've got to say it the same way. And I'm going to say DESC for descending. It's like if you're climbing down a mountain, going high to low, you're descending. You're going on a descent kind of a thing. So that's why this is short for that. It's you're sorting it high to low. That's what that's about. That should work. Double check here. I'll do it this way. Right click. I'll go to datasheet view. And there we go. You see how that these are sorted numerically in this high to low fashion. All right. And then, oh, what I wanted to show you. So in Microsoft Access, we have to unfortunately repeat this whole thing. We can't use our cool alias. I wish we could just use the alias because it kind of feels like you should be able to. Because also look at this. I'm going to go to MySQL here. I have pulled up a from their documentation here, for instance, talking about the select statement and so forth. It's like, yeah, they're like, yeah, of course you can do this. So in this case, it's saying a select expression can be given an alias using as, right, whatever alias name you care about. And then it says the alias is used as the expression's column name and can be used in group by, order by, like what we were just doing, or this other thing, having, stuff like that, Now, like, oh, for example, they go over this capability of concat, which is a fancy way of saying concatenation, or a short way of saying concatenation. And all that really means is you basically have two text portions, and you're just gluing it together in some way. So what they're doing is last name and first name, they're kind of smashing it together as like one thing it shows visually on this your output here. Anyhow, regardless of understanding this concat function, is they're having this alias as full name here, okay? And then look at this. Oh, isn't that pretty cool? We can also just use in the order by. I wish they would put another line there. It drives me nuts, some of the syntax that they have. That order by full name, because they have this alias here. So the point what I'm saying is overall, other more serious, more intense, enterprise-like relational database systems such as like MySQL, Oracle, things like that. That yeah, you can use the alias name where you think you should be able to generally, right? So this is one of the kind of hits against Microsoft Access. We gotta go old school or whatever. So that's that. I just want to mention that. So if you're working on another system, please feel free to use the alias. But unfortunately, if you're using Access, you got to do it this way. All right. Okay. I think that we are good with that regard. Okay. Now. Okay. So notice how this is regarding, the way I phrase this is the longest appointment scheduled. All right. Let me close down some of the stuff. Not too much going on here. Close all this down. I'll get rid of patient stuff. Sure. That was just was changing column sizes. Okay, yeah, I'm just closing some of this stuff we've already done before. I might keep the relationships, I guess. Here. I don't need the doctor table. What is interesting, say in this system we're tracking like so here's this duration hours thing. So like the longest appointment time we could try to find it says it's for 9 hours out there, right? So we could kind of I'll just scroll down because we see 8 here. Keep going. Here's that number 9. Right? I think that's the only 9 listed one, should be. But even though it was I guess, scheduled, in the system for that doctor to see some patient for 9 hours. Notice how actually that appointment really didn't ever occur, because it says patient seen is not checked, like it did not happen. Okay, so then we're like, all right, well, with that in mind now, wait a minute. Okay, this is I guess maybe this is also still a useful report for some other reason, but now they're like, all right, so who actually like has been really had really long appointments? Currently Dr. Smithson has the most out, the longest one, but like in reality, which doctor actually saw that patient and so forth, like that had the longest, like that actually occurred. Okay, so when I say it like that, because I'm going to create another one where it's not scheduled, it actually occurred. Okay, so what I'm going to do, since it's pretty much a similar situation, is here, I'm just going to copy that last one we did. It should be good. Let me double check. I'm going to save this, because sometimes if you don't save it, it doesn't, you get some older version thing. Paste that. Okay, 05B. Okay. And I'm going to call this 05C. It's a multi-table function. Longest appointment occurred per doctor. Yeah. It's also sorted, whatever. Okay, click OK. Alright, I'm going to... I'll keep that open, I guess. I'm going to get rid of this appointment table for now. Open this so we can see more of a side-by-side. Oh, not the B one. Let's scroll down more. 05C. There we go. I go into SQL view, change it up. It's kind of a similar format. I'm going to get rid of this thing. What we now need to do, though, maybe we bring that appointment table back up, is like, well, how do we like filter it down more? We basically don't need to even kind of factor in any of these rows where patient seen is not like checked, or an access would be like yes, or a better way I like saying it is that it's true. Okay, like, because this is like basically a boolean data type where it's like true or false, 1 or 0, things like that. So that's what we need to do. We need to get rid of it. We don't want to factor any of these that are false. Okay, or another way of thinking about it is we only want to see the ones that say patient seen is equal to true. Okay, so with that in mind, we're over here, and let's just kind of factor that aspect in. Okay, so I'm gonna go here, put my cursor there, and then I'm gonna press enter. 1, 2, 3, 4. We want to put another, where condition, and the patient seen is equal to true. Now, we should have different results. Let's go ahead and try this out. I'll just go to datasheet view. There we go. Look at that. We've got much smaller numbers now. Not this 8, 9 stuff for hours. Oh, let me change up the alias too. I forgot about that. Go back to SQL view. This is the longest appointment occurred. All right. Let me see. I'm going to save that. Run this again. It resizes it if you like rename it. So I'll just make it bigger again. So in this case, this is more like for what actually happened in the system. So before it seemed like, oh my God, like Dr. Smithson and Dr. Fernandez, they've been working like just crazy. But realistically, those appointments didn't occur, and it's the longest one out on this system was actually Dr. Gupta, right? And then shortly after that was a little bit less time is Dr. Wu, and so forth. They're kind of in the same ballpark, but you can kind of have a different measure of which doctors might be maybe overworked or something like that, right? You can kind of get some information out of this type of query that we created here. Okay. All right. So I think that looks pretty good, and we're gonna kind of keep on moving here. All right. So it's going to get a little more funky. All right. All right. Here we go. We're going to keep on moving. Let's see here. Now, we have another question. I'm like, all right, database wizard person, we got another question for you. How many times did a doctor like see a particular patient? Okay, so it's like you'll see what I'm talking about. Like having who like how many times, like if a patient comes in, let's kind of count that. Like, if that same patient for that doctor, like basically you can see which patient likes going to which doctor and things like that. All right. So in this case, we don't care about like that insurance table thing. So, but we do want for the report that we're going to create is like the doctor's name, the patient's name, and then if they came in and so forth, we're going to count that against in that sort of regard, like based on those types of aspects. All right. So basically, any redundant seeming kind of rows that you might have otherwise, we're going to count it in that sort of fashion. All right. So this is, as you can see here, you want to study your ERD, your entity relationship diagram, to make sense of the connections here. Now, we've already done the longer form of it with the 4 tables, but to refresh your memory, we're going doctor.doctorID connects with appointment.doctorID, and then switches to appointment.patientID, which connects to patient.patientID. All right, so I'm just showing this. You're going to see this later embedded in the code. All right, in this sort of fashion. So it's just what I just mentioned there. That's our chain of connections or relationships, right? Now, I'm going to keep on going, and whoa, look at all this. I think this is one of the longest SQL things out there. I was going to put more explanatory, but it's like a wall of SQL code, right? Man, this makes you look super cool when you type all this stuff down, right? But let's break it down. So, we're addressing this question: how many times did a doctor see a particular patient? Like, we're going to count if, what Tamika Jones or whatever sees Dr. Wu a bunch of times or something like that. Then we're going to say, like, oh, she came in like once, twice, 3 times for that person, or whatever, things like that, right? So that's the deal that we're going to have, and we want to see the doctor's doctor's last name, and then also say like the patient's last name. Before I move on from there, the reason I have this kind of like highlighted in purple here is we need to differentiate, kind of like what we're doing in this where join condition thing. We need to differentiate this thing. We can't just say last name comma last name, because it's like what or we can't just say last name, because it's like, wait, both of these tables have a last name column, right? Because that makes sense. A doctor can have a last name and a patient has a last name. So that's why we have to specify, we want to see the doctor's last name first, and then after that the patient's last name, and then the patient's first name, right? So we don't care about the doctor's first name apparently. But that's why we need to do it in this fashion. Anytime you see this purple stuff in this regard, we have to do that, or else the system is like going to yell at us. I could show you that as well if you run into that error message. But that's basically what we're doing. And then the beauty, the magic kind of comes into this thing where we're counting. Anytime there's basically the combination of a doctor and a particular patient, that'll count as like 1. And then if it runs out across another row in that sort of fashion, it'll be like 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's why it's written like this, like count star, because we shouldn't have null values, but whatever. This is just kind of makes your code not as weird. We're just going to count the more simple syntax. I just went with that. And I'll call it the number of appointments that Doc saw a patient. All right. And like I mentioned, we need to get it from 3 different tables: doctor, appointment, patient. This is your, using your fancy ERD. That's what why we wrote all this code in here, to join the tables properly. We also want to see, like, yeah, like the patient was actually seen. It wasn't like scheduled and then never occurred. Like, did that person actually go there, right? We just did that. So we're going to include that situation. And then we have to group by basically everything that was not the SQL function. And we're just going to keep it in the exact same order. Doctor last name, patient last name, and patient first name. Then, this is kind of interesting. We want to, you'll see more of the effect of this whole thing. So, say for our output, we care about, like, okay, it's a great report and all, but, like, let's sort it first by basically the highest value of which patient, like, has come the most times to a particular doctor. Let's do it by that first. And then it's like, all right, well, then let's have some other sorting effects, right? Because they're not just bound by only sorting by one column. And the way this works, it's almost like a cascading effect here. Like, we're going to sort by this situation first, like highest number to lowest number, because it says it's descending, comma. Then it's like, next, we're going to sort by the doctor's last name. We're going to go ascending. We want to see, like, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like, it's going to go in that type of fashion. Then we're like, all right, well, what if we have different patients that have the same last name, basically? So let's, first of all, we'll sort by the patient's last name ascending, A to Z. And then likewise, like, there could be different patients with the last name of Smith or whatever. And so to keep that a little more less jumbly looking, we're going to patient.first name, all right? So that's why all this other extra code is going on there, just so we have a nice, beautiful report, all right? So let's get into it. Let's have some fun. I'm going to type all this in there. And let's see, I'm going to go create, query design, about that. I'll click over here, SQL. And all right, here we go. I'm going to start typing a bunch of things here. Select, so I'll get rid of that for the time being. Select doctor.last name. Then we want to see the patient.last name. Oh, you know what? Let me give you some more visual room. Patient.last name. Here. And then patient.first name. Then I'm doing a comma here. It's going to go to like the next line. I'm not pressing enter. All right. We're going to count here. Basically count all the rows that show up in this regard as the number of appointments that a doctor saw a patient. Kind of long-winded, but I like descriptive column names, even if it's an alias. Or, especially if it's an alias, because we're just kind of inventing column names here. Then, I think that looks fine. We're going to get it from the doctor table, the appointment table, and then the patient table. Then we're going to have our join conditions. Do those. I would recommend do those first. Where the doctor ID is equal to the appointment doctor ID right here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the appointment patient ID is equal to the patient table patient ID. Hopefully I'm spelling everything right. There we go. And then the other condition that we wanted was 1, 2, 3, 4, and the patient seen is equal to true. Like the doctor actually saw the patient. All right. Now we have to group anytime we use this function stuff, and we're doing multi-table queries, like a bunch of these tables and such. We then have to group by, right? Group by basically all of this stuff. I'm just gonna shorten this up. I'm just gonna copy paste this. Simple. copy. I just did Control C and then Control V. Boom. Give me some typing time there. All right, now I'm going to press Enter. Not a comma. I'm going to press Enter. And then, you know what? I'll just keep it like that. We'll order it later so you can see the effect of the ordering process. Okay. I think that it works. I'm going to run the query. There we go. Let's see. Let me resize some of these columns. Okay, there we go. And the first, this is talking about the patient's first name. But so we got the doctor last name, patient, you know, doctor, then patient and stuff like that. And so it looks like, so Brenda Hayes only saw Dr. Fernandez once, right? So that's what this is what we're interpreting. It says one here. And then notice how, like, on some of these other things, like Darnell Robertson saw Dr. Gupta twice, right? So now you can have a better idea of what we're looking at here, right? So like in this case, Monica Weber saw Dr. Smithson 3 different occasions. Okay, it doesn't mean she might see other doctors. Like, I don't know if she shows up again. Weber, not her, but say, well, Darnell Robertson, he keeps bouncing around to different doctors because he doesn't have a big preference. Like, he sees Dr. Gupta, seen him a couple different times, and then Robertson shows up with different doctors, which, you know, can happen, right? Maybe you don't really have a big concern. You're like, I don't know, it's whoever's available, or because of, you know, Darnell's work schedule or something like that. He's just like, whatever, just give me, I just need to see some sort of a doctor who knows what they're kind of doing. All right. But then we're like, all right, we got this report. It looks kind of legitimate. Can we order it by this? Okay, we're gonna high to low on this process. We want to see, like, you know, in this case, like 3. That should be on the very top, and so 3, 2, 1, or whatever. So let's start adding in that order clause. Okay, so this is before the semicolon thing here. I'll press Enter. I'm going to order by do that this thing up here. Okay, we have to do the exact same thing. Okay, in Access. Count of that. And the way I want to do it is descending. Okay, and I'll stop there for now. Let's see, I don't want that extra. Okay. Then let's see. I'm going to run the query now. Hopefully it works. There we go. Boom. We got this thing sorted numerically, like 3, 2, 2, 2, 2, and then a bunch of 1s. Okay. All right, that looks pretty good, I guess. But can we improve our output? Because, like, look at this. Like, Dr. Klein shows up in this. Like, there's 2. We're in the 2 zones now. Okay. And we see Klein, Dr. Klein, and then eventually, and then it goes Gupta Klein. Well, it's like, all right, well, can we just, like, well, we like that that's sorted numerically here. That's great and wonderful, but can we also kind of sort this a little bit more and all this other kind of stuff? Like, it's kind of like here and there everywhere. So that's what we're going to do. We're then, after we sort it numerically in this fashion, then we're interested in, like, all right, well, let's sort it by the last name of the doctor, like A to Z. Okay, so I'm going to go to SQL view. Let's add in that vector. It's like, so the first thing to sort by is this. Do this first. Then, where's my cursor? Comma. Then we're just going to be like, all right, now let's see here. Let's sort by the doctor dot last name ascending now, not descending. We want to go A to Z. That's what, like, start to finish. So ascending, AS, that's shorthand, why it says that. And then I'll go back to data sheet view. Boom. There we go. You see what I'm talking about? So, like, that, it's still sorted this way first, numerically high to low. And then this is looking a little bit better. Now it's like Klein and Klein is right next to each other, so and such. So it makes it a little more readable. All right. And then it's like, all right, I guess this is better. But then if we jump our eyes over to this column, it's like, I don't know, it kind of bugs me that, like, you know, like Hayes and Blackwell, like, it would, you know, if we want this fashion, A to Z, let's sort it by the patient last name, A to Z. You see what I'm doing here? All right, so I'm going to go to SQL view. We're just going to factor that in. Then, after all that happens, right, like I just mentioned, we're then going to sort it by the patient dot last name ascending, and then just in case there's not a lot of patients that go here, but over time you can see how this could occur. Is you know, like if the same like person has the last name of Smith or something like that, and there could be different people like John Smith and Susan Smith or whatever, right? Well, let's kind of sort it then after we do the last name. Then it's let's factor in the patient dot first name. Okay, so like everything's nice and sorted and wonderful. Okay, I think code looks all right. I'll run that, and there we go. Now check this out. So we then have, so it's sorted by this first, numerically high to low. Then based on that, like once you're in the category of say 2 here or something like that, then it sorts by A to Z in this fashion, okay, by the doctor's last name, and then it factors in the patient's last name. So that's why Blackwell now, you know, because it starts with a B here, is sorted first and such. So, and then if we had similar names over here, that would also come into play with our last thing that we had in our order by code. Okay, so that's, you know, some subtle kind of sophistication. All right, all right. Let's see. This is the code for everything. Check that out again. I'm going to save this as, let's see, we're up to number 6 finally. It's a multi-table function. All right, and this is dealing with the number of appointments. Doc saw a patient. All right, I'll click OK. Seems pretty good. The output again was like this and such. All right, so a lot of SQL, right? Saw this. But if you just kind of break it down, it's not as scary as it might seem. You just have to slowly build it up, and you can make this all kind of work for you. All right. Okay. So the you know, as a reminder, anytime you're doing this multi-table stuff, right, and you're using like one of these SQL functions that I'm going over, the larger point, remember, we got to use this group by, okay? So, and that'll come up a bit later. I'm gonna switch gears now. Let's see here. Oh, that was the output of this thing, and da 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 da. Boom. Now we're getting kind of somewhat close to ending out this whole lecture, which I know nobody wants to stop, right? So, but we're gonna get into a different topic, kind of all together. I feel like it's a bit related. That's why I include it kind of in this sort of way. Let's start doing some math. Everybody loves doing math, right? And in this case, we're just going to stick to some of the basic stuff like add, subtract, multiply, and divide. These are the symbols. You got to use it in a certain fashion to make it make sense and so forth. And you can do a lot of, you can see up here, yeah, it's very simple, but depending on what you're doing, can be super powerful for you. You get a lot of details if you know what you're doing. Or if you don't know what you're doing, you get a bunch of weird stuff. So you got to be aware of that. All right, you got to like double check your math. All right, hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's start with the weird stuff first. You don't want to do, like, even though there like might be numbers to certain things, like a doctor ID and a patient ID. Like, why would you add the ID numbers? Like, what is this kind of weird nonsense that you're doing? The database system will let you do this if this is what you want to do, but that's why this is weird stuff. Don't do crazy things accidentally. All right, and think you have come up with something useful. It will come up with this query output, but it's kind of pointless. All right, so look at this. What I'm showing here is we have the doctor ID and patient ID. So with the math, how the math is working here is so the symbols that, you know, basic math here, adding numbers. Well, that's all we're doing. Is we're doing doctor ID plus patient ID. So doctor ID plus patient ID, and then we have an alias of doc plus patient. All right, so that's why like 1 + 1 = 2. I'm like, all right, 1 plus 2 equals 3. And then that continues because there's a bunch of that. So that's what it says, 3, 3, 3. Then we have this thing, 1 plus 7 equals 8. And then 1 plus 12 equals 13. So it lets us do this, but like you have to realize the nonsense of this situation. All right. Let's do it just for the effect of this though. Cut. Going into here. You know, let me just close down a bunch of these tabs that I got open. There's too much going on. Close all this down. This way you're not kind of visually, whatever, saved a bunch of things. Visually distracted here. Okay, so I'm gonna go create. I'll do query design. And I don't care about that. SQL view. And you've already seen the code. I'll just retype it here. Okay, so we're gonna get the doctor ID. And the way keep it easy, we don't have to do any join conditions. I chose this table appointment, okay, because it has both doctor ID and patient ID. I'm being kind of lazy in this process, so that's why I'm doing it from here. Okay, just a heads up. Yeah, oh, I don't care about that, any of this stuff. All right, so then going back to my query thing there. So doctor ID. Patient ID, boom, 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 and then here's the math. Doctor ID plus patient ID, and all of this works together because I didn't put a comma anywhere as like one column. All right, and then we're going to put an alias so that you know, things look slightly more informative. As doc plus patient, right, which is weird. And then we're going to go from the appointment table. All right, let's run this. Got a datasheet view. I'm going to resize my columns here. There we go. And such. I'm not organizing it or whatever, because who cares about this pointless stuff anyways. All right, so this is don't do this. You can do this in math. I'm starting with what not to do, I guess, so you don't like think you're smart and you got something cool going on. All right. So this is what you can do with SQL math, just like you can do in other regards of your life, right? If you do a bunch of crazy calculations, you'll get crazy results. Garbage in, garbage out. All right. This is weird. Let you do it. Just watch out for that. And yeah, so I just cut this down so it could kind of visually fit on the slide here. The longer result is just like going to do through all the appointments and stuff. Blah blah blah. Anyways, I'll save this. Just keep it saved, I guess. 07A. We're in the math section. Math. It's pointless math. Doc plus patient IDs, something to that effect. All right, click OK. There we go. Now, all right, we're gonna do some more pointless math. All right, check this out. Look at this craziness. Woo! It looks pretty intense. We're doing here, right? The basic thing, you can already get it. It's pointless and complex math. So we did a bunch of crazy calculations here for no reason at all. It just looks fancy or something really complex. But it's the most pointless numbers ever, because we're still basically basing on this doctor ID and this patient ID thing. We're doing a bunch of math on that. And I'm just showing this more for the effect of how kind of syntax can work in this regard. And I'm storing it this time as very weird math, and we get these kinds of results. All right, so let's just do that. So with that in mind, let's see, let's double check, save that. Go in here. I'm just going to copy this because I'm basing it effectively on this thing. Copy, paste, call something different generally. Let's see here. This one was, it's math, pointless math, and it's complex looking math. Right. There we go. open. Let's see, down here, open that up. All right, I'm going to SQL view. Let's see. Here we go. Start here. I'm gonna put some this, that. I'm doing two things because to group things properly here. Ooh. So what I'm doing here is we're doing starting out with plus here. We're adding these numbers, and then whatever that result is, we're going to multiply it by 12 minus 10. Wait, all right, look, it's 12 minus 10. Okay. And group that thing divided by 7. I'll change up my column alias. This is very, very weird math. It's all the same. So what we're doing is doctor ID plus patient ID, and then whatever that result is, times that by, we're doing a little bit of math here, 12 minus, looks like complex, but it's just really, this turns into be 2, right? 12 minus 10 is just, it's always going to be 2. So whatever happened over here times 2, then whatever this whole thing comes out to be, divide that by 7, so that gets our crazy looking fractional stuff, and then output it in this very weird math column. All right, that should work hopefully. I'm going to run this, and I'm going to resize my columns. There we go. We got this pointless stuff looking here, right? Yeah. So that's the thing. I'm not going over this because it's like it's all pointless. I just want to mention that you can do this and you got to be careful, all right? Because it can be powerful or weird, and you got to know which one you're doing, all right? So that's the deal with that situation. Now you're wondering, like, all right, show me something useful here. Let's do it. So check this out. What if we were curious, like, what's the yearly pay of each doctor that we have on the system? Okay. And a good tip, like for any of you in the job market, right? If somebody, some recruiter or something like that says, hey, you could make, $40 an hour or $45 an hour or $60 an hour or whatever, right? Well, quick math, especially if you're a full-time employee like in the United States, is the traditional thing, like if you're a salaried employee, that you make a constant rate, and the kind of standard thing is that there are, if you're a full-time employee, that there's 52 weeks in a year, and you times that by, because normally people work 40 hours a week, salary, even if you go overtime, a lot of times they just might just cap it at 40 hours generally. So 52 weeks times 40 hours per week that you work turns out to be 2080 or 2080. All right. So this is a quick calculation that you can do when you're, say, negotiating or something like that. So that, like, you're on the phone with somebody and they quote out some hourly pay rate to you. You could just, whatever the number, $45 an hour times 2080, that's gonna give you a general baseline of what this yearly salary is, like not including taxes, right? And that's the effect here. This is actual math. A lot of people in the HR, human resources world, this is a legit thing that you can definitely do. Okay, so using this little subtle trick here, we can, based on, how this works is each doctor, they make pretty good money, as you can see here, but they make different rates depending on their specialty or how long they've been with the firm or something like that, right? So that's how if we do this report in this regard, it looks kind of simple. It's really not that much code, but it can be pretty interesting just by knowing a little bit of math here, and that's what this is doing here. Okay, so let's go ahead and run that query. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to create a new query design. Put here. I'm gonna go to SQL view, and you know what? I'll show you the doctor table so you can see what I'm talking about. Doctor, move this back down. there's different doctors in the system, and they have like different hourly pay rates. All right, they're pretty good pay rates, but that's what they are currently, or whatever. So again, the question is like, well, what's the annual salary for these doctors? That's what we're doing. All right. So go over here. We're going to then, you've seen this, but we're going to select the last name of the doctor, and then we want to do hourly pay rate times 2080, right, 2080. We're going to have it stored as the yearly salary, right? And then we're going to get that from the doctor table. I think that's all we need. All right, I'll go to datasheet viewer here, resize my columns. Let's see, double click. Yeah, and I didn't organize it and sort anyway. It's kind of jumbled a little bit. You could do the order by and such, right? But that's what I was showing you on the slides here, right? So you can see like, oh, Dr. Gupta, I guess, yeah, he's the highest one that I see, 188 and such. But yeah, that's a rule of thumb of how much basically each doctor is making, for that doctor's office. Okay, so kind of cool, right? Like, so just knowing a little bit of math. Go back to here. Knowing just a little bit of math, we're doing the hourly pay rate times 2080. Look at these little cool life tips I'm teaching you about, right? So that's it. I'm going to save this as 08 math doctors yearly pay. Okay. Click OK. They might have other benefits or whatever. No, but that's in terms of their base salary, I guess. There we go, and that's that. Go back to this thing. Okay. All right, now check this out. We're basically almost done, actually. All right, so check this out. This is the last and final query I'm going to go over, because what's interesting about this thing, try to not get too distracted by trying to understand all the code quite yet, is that some of the warm-up things we started with way back before, right, in this lecture, is we were just doing single table queries, and then we moved up and we were doing the SQL functions, right? And then eventually we did SQL functions with multi-table queries, right? And then we moved on to a different subject, talking about math, using like symbols here, times and whatever. And so what this one is about, it's actually everything all together. This is dealing with math, it's dealing with multi-table queries, and a function all together for a practical reason that you might really care about. So say the doctor's office is like, especially when they're dealing with insurance companies or something like that, and they're like, okay, we just need like a general report of, like, what are the billable patient costs? Like, not the number of hours, but like, depending on which patient saw what doctor, because they make different rates or something like that. So then they as they try to, bill the patient, the price might fluctuate depending on which doctor they saw. Okay. And so that's what this effect is doing. It's including that factor. So they want a report of basically like collectively per each doctor. We want to see monetarily however much hours they've been with various patients or whatever. How much can we basically recoup, or should be generally able to recoup from billing the patients in that sort of way, right? So with that in mind, that's what this query is all doing. So as an example, it's like, so say Dr. Wu, you're going to see the result of this. It'll basically say 392.68. Like what this is about. It's so Dr. Wu makes $82.67 an hour, and on the system there have been basically 3 appointments that somebody have like, different patients have seen Dr. Wu, and at different time lengths. So like one of the ones is like for 3.25 hours, stuff like that. And so like we're using some math here, whatever the rate is times the hours, and then we're adding this plus, and then this repeats like per each appointment that the doctor, in this case, actually did see a patient, right? Because they want to bill to recoup actual money, right? So that is what we're dealing with. And maybe to orient you a little bit more, let me get out of this, or I could keep that full screen, but like I need to go to here, that let's see the doctor table. You can see, you say Dr. Wu here, okay? The hourly rate is at $82.67, okay, like I was mentioning before. And looking at, say, I'm going to open up the appointment table. I'm like, all right, appointment, okay. That, we could scroll down. I think it's sorted generally by doctor ID over here. So Dr. Wu is, you can see here, Dr. Wu is doctor ID number 5. Okay, so I'm looking for that, just kind of manually hunting and picking with my eyes here. And I see 4 of them. I'm like, all right, 4 of them, but wait a minute. Actually, one of them he did not see the patient on, so we're not going to factor that in. Okay, so in that case, like the 3.25, there's a half-hour appointment there, and then an hour appointment. Okay, and saw different patients or whatever. But we just care about like billable hours, and what that actually means in a monetary sense, not the number of hours. That's not what we're curious about. Like per each doctor, how do we factor in? How do we like bill that appropriately, given which patient saw which doctor? Okay, so that's what we're doing. We want to filter out. We don't care about these things. We're gonna like do the math that I'm showing you here. This stuff, like blah 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 blah. All of this stuff should result in, and you can manually calculate this on your end. You could double check my math. That's the result that we want to see for Dr. Wu. Like, what's the billable patient cost for him? Okay. So all of this code, as you've already seen, that is what is going on, right? It seems a little simple looking, but it's actually a little more complicated than you might realize. Okay, because again, this is dealing with math, right? Here's our math portion, where times, that's where this stuff comes in, times or multiply, right? And then we are using a multi-table query, because we're doing from the doctor and appointment table. So that's why we have this join condition here. We want to join them properly. And then we're also using a function, sum. That's where these plus symbols, it's like collectively however many rows show up, it's like does this plus does this, and then it keeps doing that, right? This plus that. That's what the sum is doing here, okay? But the order of operations, it's doing it in this sort of fashion, okay? And then we have this condition here. We're like, well, we want to make sure that we actually saw the patient so we don't like overbill or whatever. And then we get scrutinized later and such. So that's what all this code is doing. All right. Let's go ahead and type all this out now. Let's see here. Go over here. I am going to create a new query. Query design. Don't care about that. Go to SQL view. All right. So I'm going to select the last name of the doctor, and then do all that stuff I just mentioned. Sum hourly pay rate times the duration hours as billable patient cost with doc, like with the doctor, right? We're going to get it from the doctor and the appointment table. We don't care about all these patient names and stuff. We just want to know how to calculate things between the two. All right. And then the join condition between those two tables. It's where the doctor ID is equal to the appointment dot doctor ID 1, 2, 3, 4 and patient seen is equal to true. They actually saw the patient. We then have to, anytime, remember, we have to group by, because we're doing this multi-table thing and such with a SQL function. So that's why I have to say group by just the last name, because that's the only column that we listed here other than this thing, right? So that we're going to group by the doctor's last name. And then we're interested, like, let's order that so that the highest value comes out on top. So we're going to order by this. I'm going to just copy paste. And Access drives me nuts. You can't just use the alias. I don't know why. It bugs me because it's like, you know, like if you change up your whatever's going on here, then you have to repeat that down here and you have to remember that. So I really wish they need to implement this thing of including that alias effect. You should be able to use it down here, but Microsoft Access is a little bit limited in that regard. Anyways, we're going to sort it in a descending fashion, high to low numbers. I think that should work. Let me run the query. Looks kind of good, I believe. All right. Now, one thing is there's other ways you can get kind of crazy with. These are like the monetary values, but since it's like doing it in a very numerical sense, it doesn't like offhand, I guess, know that these are, should say like a $sign here or something like that, and only 2 decimal places and such. There's ways to like make this a little more sophisticated in that sort of regard, but I don't want to get into that in that regard. So I'm actually just happy with this right here, because what I'm saying is, say, remember the example is going over Dr. Wu, and it's saying here 392, and it says 0.6825. But since due to rounding or whatever, even if it's rounded or whatever, it would kind of ignore this stuff anyways. So the number that we should have is $392.68, right, for the billable patient cost. Let me go back to the slide that I was talking about. That's what it says, like right here. 392.68 is what we care about. So that gives us a breakdown of everything going on. So in a way, you could actually see like, oh, Dr. Klein, he's like the moneymaker over here, right? So he's got basically twice as much than Dr. Wu. Okay, it could just be, you know, Dr. Wu might be new or whatever due to scheduling or something like that. But that is, you can see more of a breakdown of how this all factors. All right, so it's a pretty complicated looking thing when you think about it, even though in this case the SQL wasn't extremely lengthy, but it is doing a lot for us. Okay, let's see, let me just say this. I'll make it say 09. This is dealing with math, multi-table stuff. It is also dealing with the SQL function, and I'll call it billable patient cost. From the, this is based on the doctor, like the doctor's gross pay, like how much they make per hour, kind of a thing. That's what we're basing it on, not including, you know, their own taxes on the doctor and stuff. All right, so there we go. I think that is good to go, and that's pretty much it. And you saw this, right? I just went over. All right, so that's all I got. So I hope you've been you know, taking notes and things of that nature. I hope you learned a lot. So yeah, because we touched on a whole bunch of things, right? Talking about how different SQL functions work, how the math plays in, how to group things when you're doing certain aspects. So yeah, so if you went through this whole thing and been trying to pay attention, you are going to be super sharp in the industry. And take my good life tip of using an entity relationship diagram to make sense of everything. So that is all I got. I hope you have a great day, and thanks again. All right, take care.